Simpsons Index, an online spreadsheet that is also a podcast. This is the podcast. Coming to you out of Hawthorne in Adelaide, this is the Simpsons Index, episode 123. Hello out there, I'm your host, Elliot J. O'Neill, and joining me today in this very special episode is the folks from Shut Up and Take My Podcast.
Woo!
Hello. Including Ellen.
Why am I included? I'm part of the Baby Beard Media team.
We're all included.
Why am I featured? Why do I get and starring?
And also including Phil.
Hi. Hello. I'm not outraged. I'm not outraged in any way.
And also including Sean.
So if you're featured, I'm more of like a cameo.
Oh.
So I'm less than.
Sean playing himself.
Sean.
And playing the part of Sean. Sean. And yes, thank you guys for joining me for the Simpsons Index. This is the podcast where we watch and review 3 episodes of The Simpsons at a time, but there's a twist. Each episode must come from a different decade. How are we doing?
Not great.
Yeah, no.
You've given me a beer, so I'm mildly better.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I'm really enjoying this gin and tonic. It's really helping.
Your second gin and
take
tonic.
the edge off.
Yeah.
Oh, look,
I spilled the first one.
yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you elaborated because people were like, fucking hell.
Jesus. Ellen, lay off.
I came out of this episode with a burning rage, which has softened slightly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see if we can build it back up for you.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I always ask, how are you doing just after we've watched the newest episode of The Simpsons, so
Yeah.
I know how you're doing.
Yeah. What about you, Elliot? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm great, thanks. We
Yeah.
just spent the morning recording an episode of your podcast from our friends Pods in the Kia Springfield, where
That
we
we
did
did.
your 100th Futurama Shut Up and Take My Podcast episode.
Indeedy, which will be already up by the time people are listening to this episode. Spooky,
Yes.
spooky.
But yeah, for my listeners who may not have heard your show, why don't you give them the elevator pitch? Tell them what's it about.
Yeah, sure. So Shut Up and Take My Podcast is a Futurama podcast that pits episode against episode in a bloody, glorious gauntlet battle for all your entertainments. And it was brought up as a way to prove that Jurassic Park is not that episode. That was
Ding! You have reached ground level.
And as well as being Futurama fans, I'm assuming that you also love Matt Groening's other work from The Simpsons, the very show that this show is based on.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Disenchantment for a second. Disenchantment.
We didn't hate Disenchantment.
Sexy Chris has thoughts on it. I didn't love it. I think you guys, I don't know.
I watched a few episodes and immediately lost interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was just kind of back. Like, it was okay. It's something that I would just tune in and, like, shut my brain off for a
Yeah.
second and be like, okay.
But yeah, to me, it's a classic housework show, like especially vacuuming. Like,
Yeah.
With Simpsons, mainly for Australian listeners, there used to be a thing on Foxtel called Animation Domination. That was the one that had just 8 episodes of Simpsons back to back in the morning, and it finished at 11 a.m. I ate it up.
oh yeah, that Fox 8 marathon made hangovers pleasurable.
Oh, it was great. But I haven't, before today, I don't think I've watched an episode of The Simpsons that is less than 15 years old.
Yeah.
In about 15
I
years.
definitely
Yeah.
haven't.
Yeah, I mean, all my memories of The Simpsons are from, the golden era,
Yeah.
as they call it, the Scorpio episode.
It's very
the
quotable.
Beer Baron,
all the quotable
all those
episodes,
ones, yeah.
basically, that become just more part of the pop culture zeitgeist than
Yeah,
any...
Yeah.
getting the quoting battles with
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got something for you. Is that originally, before we did Shut Up and Take My Podcast, so myself, Sexy Chris and James, we recorded 9 episodes of a Simpsons podcast.
Really?
Yeah, so we actually have them still on our computer. 9
Woof.
completed episodes. We started from season 1, and then we didn't release them. But as soon as we finished 9, then we realized that 4-finger discount was a thing, and we listened to one of their episodes and went, "Oh, they did the exact same points we did. Fuck it, what do we do? Fuck it, Futurama. Let's do Futurama."
That's for our... Yeah, thankfully we haven't plagiarized anyone else.
Yeah. So we almost became a Simpsons
Just
podcast.
completely unoriginal hacks that we
Yeah.
are.
And yeah, I came to you guys because I'm a big fan of your show as well. Like,
Aw.
I was
Aw.
telling Sean the other night that I pretty much from like October binged the entire thing.
Oh my god.
You did 100 episodes in 3 months.
Yeah, basically, because I caught up with you guys like around the time that you started season 6. And
Good God, man.
yeah,
That's like 70 hours of
It's a lot of
listening.
housework.
I know.
I'm not shaming you. I do the same thing.
No, and I've still got that weird thing where it's like actually weird to hear your voices and actually see people right now.
Oh, no, this is
there's-
fucking surreal.
Yeah, there's no people present here. For
No, it's
clarification, you are speaking to like empty voids, and the voices are just appearing through the microphones.
Huh, my parents were right. But just quickly before we hook into the episode review with our new guest onto the show, we just like to ask about your Simpsons history. Where did the show begin with you? We'll start with you, Ellen.
Oh, shit. Okay. Like most people just grew up watching The Simpsons. It was kind of like around a dinner time show. So like post dinner, it would be on and you'd always be like, Mum, can we turn on Simpsons for dinner? And she'd be like, no. But then she would do it. Like you'd get everyone on your side and then you'd have to gang up and it would be like, no, Mum, come on, we all want to watch it. And don't be that guy. And, you know, it's like the nuclear family. And I know my family certainly related because there was 4 of us, you know, 1 boy, 1 girl and a dog. We just didn't have a random baby as well that sometimes appears and sometimes disappears.
And sometimes shoots a guy.
Yeah. And so it's pretty much all the golden era. And it was always the thing of like you would quote it the next day at school. And like Sean said, the animation domination was a great way to kind of just binge episodes and be really caught up in the pop culture-ness of it all and being current and on trend. And just, it's very quotable. It's like a human thing. Like there was this play that happened... Was it a few years
Mr.
ago
Burns?
called Mr. Burns? Yeah, I don't know if you saw it. It was a Sydney production and like it's basically post-apocalypse and these people are all trying to recount like episodes of The Simpsons because that's how ingrained it is into our storytelling as people.
Yeah.
It's basically like that where between all of us we could probably quote a whole episode.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and of course that becomes like running family jokes as well. Like I'm a vegetarian and the Lisa vegetarian episode is quite like I still remember it very fondly and also my family do as well because me being the only vegetarian they'd always be like, you don't make friends with salad. Fuckers.
Yeah.
Anyway.
If you're going to marry a carrot. And,
And then at some point I just stopped, I guess. Yeah.
Yep. That's the similar story with a lot of people. How about you, Sean?
Yeah, it's kind of what I was talking about before. Is that we had Foxtel way back when, and Simpsons were on constantly. I grew up on things like the Ninja Turtles and the Batman animated series and all those really cool animations. And then when I became a big boy, I graduated to Simpsons. And it's just one of those things where you can go to anyone on the street, and if you yell dental plan, they will respond. Like
it's the modern day Marco Polo.
It's like any situation in life you can attribute to a Simpsons quote and vice versa. It is the epitome of pop culture.
Yeah.
And I just like, even though I haven't watched a Simpsons episode, it's just one of those like constants through my childhood where I watched all those classic episodes 10, 20 times each, if not more. Like Hank Scorpio is my favorite. It's my favorite episode of all time.
It's in my top 5, that one, for sure, yeah.
Marianne gets in the hammock with you.
And how about you, Phil?
So my history differs a little bit from these two, both being a little bit older and from the UK. So I actually remember, I hope I'm not misremembering, but no one's going to check me. I'm pretty sure I remember when it first came over to the UK, as before we had cable or anything like that. And I seem to remember it being a big kind of fanfare when Channel 4 picked it up and we're like, oh my God, we're getting The Simpsons. And I seem to sort of remember, this is okay. I remember the first seasons being a bit shaky.
Yeah.
But it sort of grew and grew, and then eventually I think we got cable in our house, and we had Sky One was our kind of pop culture channel, which is where Futurama appeared as well. And again, it would be on around dinner time. They would chuck 2 or 3 or 4 episodes on at a time, and you'd have the marathon occasionally. And it's just so accessible and watchable. I'm one of 4 boys, and we're separated by like quite a bit of time. So my older brothers are quite a bit older than me, and my younger brother's quite a bit younger than me.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought
Sean looks very confused.
I just thought you had 2 brothers, and now I'm hearing about
I have 3 brothers.
Mysterious third.
Yeah, no,
sure.
I need to meet
We've only
this
been
man.
friends for years.
That's the one that they keep in the attic and feed fish heads.
But my point is that it appealed to all of us.
Yeah.
You know, despite the big gap in ages, all of us got a kick out of it, and we would all, watch it as a family, after dinner or something, and it became kind of a collective experience for both my family and all the people that I knew. And the ones that really stick with me are that same kind of era, the Hank Scorpio episode. My personal favorite is the Beer Baron episode, which is just to die for. That episode, so immensely quotable. And I guess I sort of grew up alongside The Simpsons in a way. I watched it sort of mature into a better show where the gags got more sophisticated and the storylines got more poignant and there's a little bit more social commentary as it matured, and I matured as well. And so that's why that era of The Simpsons kind of means a lot to me.
All right, well, we've got nostalgic about where The Simpsons began for you guys, and now let's get into where it is now.
Yes.
We just
What?
watched an episode from the HD era. This was Season 23, Episode 4, Replaceable You. First released in November of 2011, it was directed by Mark Kirtland, written by Stephanie Gillis. In this episode, Homer gets a new assistant called Roz, but she quickly usurps his position.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. And in the B story, I think. Yeah,
think.
Yeah, we had a question about this. So which one's the A and which one's the B story?
The other plot.
Yeah. In the other plot, Bart and Martin build a cute little seal robot that ends up being like a comfort robot for the senior citizens until like funeral home directors trying to sabotage it.
Yeah, is that what they were?
Yeah, they
yeah.
were funeral home directors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, what do we think?
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
Thematically, what is this episode about?
Because they don't, because you're right. And now this is going to be hard to pin down because they don't come back together.
No.
The
They
plots are
don't,
completely
they don't share
disconnected.
any themes at all.
Okay, so if we take I'm going to call them the A plot and the 1 plot to use a Futurama. So the 1 plot, which is going to be the seal plot,
Seals.
is about
Yeah.
like what we do to old people and the loneliness and that.
Yeah, it's also a little bit about Lisa realizing that she needs to get off her high horse occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that things that she dismisses can also be valuable.
Exactly.
Yeah, 'cause that's the
Certain
Lisa
context.
side of it.
Yeah.
And then for the A plot,
Yeah.
It's Homer one-upping his new assistant who is...
Because she's mean, he breaks her boundaries and wins.
Yeah.
but also like he's being called out on his incompetence too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it kind of makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. He should be fired 500 times in one day.
So
Yeah.
what's that one about?
No one learns anything in that.
It's women are bossy and they should be brought down and their boundaries should be pushed, basically.
Well, that's actually what I hate about the episode. And I'm
It's
going to
so
say that's
uncomfortable.
That's what stands out to me is that the resolution is that he breaks her physical boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's
which is okay.
I also don't get why that's a joke, that she
Yeah.
can't stand to be touched. Like, how is that an unreasonable thing?
Yeah.
That you don't want to be touched by strangers? Or even, like, look, sure, there are people that, like, I know very well and whatever. Sometimes I still don't want to be touched or hugged by them.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's
Okay.
absolutely fine. And then you have Homer inciting a whole crowd going, hug, hug, hug.
But
Yeah.
don't forget, she was a little bit mean to
Oh, of
Homer.
course. She was mean to Homer, who is actively putting people in danger.
I've got it. I can tie them together.
Okay.
Do it.
So the A plot is about women learning that they need to be okay with being touched by men.
That they need to step
Yep.
down.
And for the 1 plot, it's about Lisa learning that she needs to get off her high horse sometimes. So this is an episode about learning. It's about women learning.
To stay in their fucking place.
Stay in your lane.
It's a good, yeah, there you go.
Well done, writer Stephanie Gillis.
Oh, no. Oh, no. No one learns
Who
anything.
I don't want to
Women cannot be feminists as well.
Well, I don't want to imply nepotism here, but she is married to Al Jean, and
Oh,
she
go
doesn't,
on.
and
Oh,
she doesn't
really?
have any serious writing credits prior to The Simpsons.
This episode is a mess.
Well, I'll throw to you, Phil. What's a moment that stands out to you for better or worse?
I think for me, for worse, is the Nambler joke. I just think it is... Paedophilia is just not a funny joke. Like, I'm sure there are funny jokes about it out
It's
there.
not a well you should go to.
It's
No.
No.
not something the Simpsons
You
should
could
be
have
making
had
a joke
much
about.
funnier acronym. Like, I don't know.
Anything
a
else?
few are coming to mind. I love this is for Australian listeners. There was like a Demi Lardner video going around.
She's my favourite.
Yeah, parodying people who don't want gays to have equal rights or be teaching in schools. And she's like, hear it, families against gays or fogs.
Great.
That's absolute. I love that one so much.
Yeah. Oh, that warms my heart. Yeah, Demi Lardner is like one of my favorite comedians.
It goes hand in hand for me with like the heroin joke, which is that one I find slightly funnier.
I giggled
but it
at the
just
heroin.
doesn't-
I giggled at heroin too, but
giggle
I
at
take
it,
your point.
but it doesn't feel like a Simpsons gag.
No, they felt like South Park gags.
or
Yeah.
Family Guy.
Yeah, true.
And you never want to feel like a South Park gag. You really don't.
No, but that's it. It was because you guys talk about in the recent series of Futurama, you know, they're going more risque now.
It's quite blue, yeah.
Yeah.
But these are like crass. And
Yeah.
like,
And also, Simpsons has, well, for the most part, been a family show.
Yes.
Like, yes, it's still got bits of crude humor in there and whatever, but it's meant to be aimed at a family demographic. That's
real.
why it's the nuclear family, to like parody of things that we know to be true, an observational thing. Whereas Futurama has always, because Fry as well is a young adult, so like we relate to the central character and it's all about that kind of time in your life, whereas Simpsons is about, you know, the family life, which is kind of all
what's really
ages.
interesting about that is that back in the classic era, Simpsons was condemned for being this not family friendly
Yeah.
show, and it's the devil's work, and you shouldn't be listening to it or watching it or anything. Like,
George H.W. Bush coming out in a press conference and saying, we need more families like the Waltons and less like the Simpsons.
that's the
Oh
exact
my
quote I was trying to think of. It's crazy that you
God.
have the president coming out and condemning your TV show,
Was
which
that
is, you know,
after they did George Bush
No,
Senior in Simpsons?
That episode was inspired by the whole tiff. Right. So throw into you, Sean. What is a moment from this episode that stands out to you, for better or worse?
I have a question about canon. Like certain jokes where I'm trying to think, okay, is any of these jokes established canon within the lore of the universe, or are they just thrown in for the sake of the joke? Like Homer's snort. Like, for starters, it goes on way too
Goes
long.
so long.
And secondly, I'm pretty certain Homer, like, he has a very distinct laugh. And I know it's like me going, actually. But,
Yeah.
like, just certain jokes where I just go, you've put a spotlight on these jokes, and it just makes me go... The whole episode, and I don't know if this is indicative of the HD era, it feels like writers sitting around trying to make jokes, as opposed to the classic era where it's like the story came first.
Yeah.
This is jokes upon jokes instead of what is the narrative.
Which is the emblematic kind of full flat gag? Is it the kind of coffee laugh bit?
Kind of, or even just Martin, where it's like you're putting in jokes and it's just for the sake of jokes, rather it doesn't have any ties to who the characters are as people.
Milhouse kissing his dog.
Milhouse kissing his dog, Martin being bi, like Homer having this affectation. It's just really weird.
And this is a trope of theirs in the HD era where they give the kids like adult situations, like Martin being bi or Milhouse like being overly fucking
worshipping
Lonely
a
and
Bart.
clingy and
I like to watch you sleep and like all that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
that's not a kid joke.
That's no.
It's the kids being adults and creepy adults at that.
Whereas,
Yeah.
like, you know, you give Homer a thing with Flanders. That was completely in character for Homer. He's like, I can see him being like, you're mightier than Jesus. I will get down and worship you.
Yeah,
and Flanders is very
Yes, Phil.
uncomfortable.
But that also comes as part of a conversation which moves the plot forward, right? He needs to find a way to deal with this person in his
Yeah.
life. And the joke then, Flanders gives him a solution and then he worships him.
Are you laughing at Flanders?
Flanders.
Flanders. Flanders. What?
Flanders is the dessert. It's
Flanders.
the Simpsons branded dessert.
France. Okay. Flanders.
Flanders.
But it comes on the back of a plot moving moment where I
100%.
feel like a lot of other things just feel really bolted
Yeah,
on.
well, it seems like they're trying to approach gags through the characterization and not, here's a story. How would these characters act in this situation? It's like, oh, what are Homer's traits? I guess he's a dumb oaf who's really lazy. Let's make some jokes out of that.
for
Do you know
real.
what I mean?
If you can afford me a South Park reference, it's like the manatee joke of how they
For
write
real.
Family Guy gags.
Yeah.
It's just get a few different words, pop them in the name generator, and that's your joke.
even
and it's
though
funny.
you could make it equally like simplification of the way that South Park makes jokes, where it's just like,
Right.
does it have shit? Does it have blood? Is it making fun of everyone and being overly centrist? Boom, bada bing, bada boom. Here's a joke.
Edgy
Anyway,
done.
edgy. Yeah, is it edgy? Will it make a meme? Sorry, I really don't like South Park.
Well, I think we got there.
But how about you, Ellen? What's a moment from this episode that stands out to you, for better or worse?
You may have guessed, but it's the bit where they encourage Burns to hug Jane Lynch's character. It made me so uncomfortable. It's not funny at all. It's actively harmful. The only other thing I can think of is an astute observation about the people who would go to see Paul Blart Mall Cop. Like Homer absolutely is. Absolutely is the demographic, and all the jokes are like terrible things happening to Paul Blart, and people being like,
He's getting weed
He's
on."
a fat idiot. He deserves this.
And the thing is, that's not even a parody of Paul Blart Mall Cop. No, that is something that would actually be in Paul Blart Mall Cop.
I'm fairly sure it is. I've never watched it, and I never will. But like,
And its sequel.
So, play count. Have you seen this episode before today?
No.
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 No, I've seen it
Can
once.
we harmonize? No.
Nailed it.
So in The Simpsons Index, we like to talk about the wackiness. So like cartoony elements, how were they balanced in this episode?
As I think most of us, you could tell by like just a giggle meter. Like there's a few sight gags and like, you know.
Nelson's punching thing.
I
like
love
the
that.
way
The science of why are you hitting yourself?
Yes,
That's
it's
great.
I love everything they do in the science fair. scene. All those
Pubes. Who's got them?
Although there was one joke where Kearney had a skull and it said, "Is this Uta?"
Yeah. Is Uta dead?
Yeah, they always play with that, and that's not a thing I'm a fan of.
Toupee-dar.
I like Toupee-dar.
Toupee-dar's right. But yeah, the science of why are you hitting yourself is my
hilarious.
favorite gag of this entire episode.
Just the whole way they use the cartoon to portray the seal toy, right?
Yeah.
And its giant eyes.
It's the Disney.
Neotenous and
It's the Disney formula of making something cute. Like when I did visual design, and there's like a sketchbook and stuff of Disney designs, and they actually have a formula to which it's set. It's like a ratio. It's similar to a baby where it has to have
neotenous.
it has to have like a big head, huge eyes,
yeah.
and kind of like be short and
soft
a
features.
short kind of stumpy body.
Yeah.
A corgi essentially.
Corgis are super cute.
If you go by the corgi rule.
So that's something I think they use, like, it's very effective.
Yeah.
Like, they use the cartoon element of it to really pull that stuff up. And all of us actually, made that noise several times.
Yeah.
Aww. And then it pays off, right? When Snake does the same thing. And that's my favorite joke in the whole episode is when Snake can pull off his seal eyes and that gets him out of jail.
Yeah.
And it's like got the light reflecting in 3 points on the pupils, and he's like, and Wiggum's like, "Oh, okay."
I laughed at that.
What's his little noise afterwards? Like Snakehead just really like kind of just proud of himself, like
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the seals were probably my favorite part of the episode.
Oh yeah, hands down. Those seals were adorable.
The one plot is actually pretty. I enjoyed most of the one plot,
Yeah.
besides things like Mambler and
The one plot could actually be a really good observational episode. Like, and it's similar to, how corporations tag on to these inventions or become ambassadors for a movement, and you go, this is a big corporation that's getting on that, but should I still be happy anyway because they are still making the movement known and they are still doing good things? I think if you had a Lisa-centric episode with that issue, it would be a really good one, because we all struggle with that. We all go, is the actions of this thing, are the benefits actually outweighing this?
She knows that he sort of cheated to make the invention.
And Lisa is always like a deeply moralistic person, and so it'd be good to see her wrestle with that.
No, it's easy just to have her say one line that she's like, oh, maybe this does make a difference, and then it's done with.
And then she's not in the episode at all.
Yeah, then it's finished.
Yeah, that's so weird how they make an effort to include her and then not.
Wait, she doesn't appear again, does she?
No.
Not really, no.
She doesn't even appear when they're trying to reprogram the seals and
Where
get
she would
them
be
out of
really
jail.
useful.
No, they just drop her and make a stupid fucking Nambler joke. And the whole inclusion of the funeral parlors,
Oh, the funeral directors, yeah.
that is just such a half-baked idea to add drama into this story.
Yeah. Also, when we first see the panel of funeral directors, they're all men, all white dudes. And then in the last scene, they pull out and there's one woman who looks like Morticia Adams.
Yeah,
and
she
it's
does.
like,
Yeah.
It's like,
I got to say, with the
What the
one
fuck?
plot, there are two visual jokes that I really love. One is "Sit in there, baby."
the geriatric cat.
Yeah. And the other one is just indicative of the family as well, is that when they first arrive at the old folks' home, there's a sign on the car that says, "Congratulations, Lisa," crosses out Lisa, and Bart's there.
Oh, I missed that.
Because
That's
Bart's
good.
never the one that gets
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Aside from the wackiness, we'll talk about the heart. What the moments that gave you big bumps, and I think, tying into the seals as well.
Seal.
And seeing Jasper all super depressed, and then that little seal climbs up on him.
Yeah.
And then later on, they're combing each other.
That was adorable. Yeah, that was adorable when the seal whips out a comb and combs his beard.
Just nams it out of his hand.
Yeah.
It's a mutual little
Here
thing.
you go.
But I just wish they'd gone further with that. There's a real thing to be discussed about how we treat senior citizens.
How we
right?
just put him in a home.
Yeah, I feel like Simpsons used to address things like that and actually have something to say about it. And here they go, oh, whoa.
Well, what was the episode
Glance
where...
off that.
Oh, I can't remember. There's a lot of really good episodes with The Simpsons that deals with Homer and Abe's relationship.
Homer's mum.
Yeah, it might be the Homer's mum episode where we find out just how really abusive and emotionally neglectful Abe was to young Homer, and that's why he is retaliated by putting him in a fucking home, because he's like, I can't stand, it's a deep anger that acts between them. They've never really liked each other. They've just had to coexist, and it's it's a really good statement on bad family relationships and the fact that you feel obligated to do something with your old relative, but like you don't want to actually put yourself out there, so you just stick them in a home. Like,
But the whole robotic seal thing, I don't know if you guys knew, but this was based on an actual thing.
really?
Yeah.
What, like Furbies?
But no, like there were actual seals, and like the Simpsons used them as the basis for their design that old people were using, and they were like old.
I'm so happy. That's really
So
sweet.
that story has like a really happy ending.
Were they robotic
Right.
as well, or
Yeah, they were robotic and reactive to certain actions, and like
Yeah.
they gave them to senior citizens as like a comfort thing. And
Yeah.
Because everyone knows their children aren't going to come and see them.
No.
Yes.
Can we get some seals? Can we get?
really
are they
need
still
it. I
we
really
might
around?
need
need
it.
some comfort seals.
I would
after
like
this
an
episode.
emotional comfort seal, please.
Is there any heart in the A plot?
No.
No.
Oh, the home
No.
plot. No, just
There's none, is
disregard
there?
that.
No. He's upset that his boss has assistant has now
called him
replaced
out on his
him.
bullshit.
Yeah, that's basically it. None of the family factors into that conversation.
What does Marge do in this episode?
She has like two
She
cutaways.
has 2 lines, yeah.
Where she's just like,
Go pick the scab! That's
Yeah,
right, that
yeah.
was kind
She
of
gets
funny.
her Marge shinning moment as
Yeah.
well.
Yes, yes.
'Cause, yeah, we did Simpsarama before where
The
she
sandwich sense, yeah.
Marge has superpowers.
Yeah. That was kind of hilarious though, because
Yeah.
it's always the thing of like, oh, you want to pick that scab so much,
Oh.
and your mum's like, don't do it.
One thing I will say that they didn't use it effectively, but one thing I enjoy is I got so sick of seeing commercials for new Simpsons episode where they get amazing guest stars and they just make them play themselves.
Yeah.
Because I remember, for example, DMY, Don't Mess Yourself. That's Lisa Kudrow.
Is
yeah,
it?
yes, yeah.
They used to get their stars to play.
And she
like,
even says in that episode, "Don't be such a Phoebe."
Nice.
Yeah.
where they would use their guest stars to just be original characters rather than their fucking
Drew
selves.
Barrymore was Krusty's daughter. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's only a few where they've got. Well, I mean, for really, really big stars, they often get them to play themselves.
Like
but
Tony
like
Hawk is Tony Hawk.
Paul
and-
McCartney.
Yeah, it was more indicative of like the teens and after episodes where it's just, "Hi, I'm Jay Leno. Hi, I'm Tony Hawk."
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
Here's
whereas-
$10 million.
Yeah.
Having
Thanks.
said that, though, there still isn't that great a use of this star. She's two-dimensional.
This is my point, is
No.
that with like Jane Lynch and Ricky Gervais, for example, they play original characters, but they're just shit.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
essentially themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's funny, in these when we do the heart question, when we're talking more about the absence of the heart,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that speaks volumes. But ultimately, did this feel like an episode of The Simpsons? How was the integrity of the show and the individual characters?
For me, no.
Nah.
And obviously this comes from me not watching for 15 years, but it just, as I said, like the main thing for me is it just feels like writers got together, tried to make a bunch of jokes roughly resembling an idea of the thematic importance of, for example, what we do to old folks and that, but they're not really touching on it at all.
Yeah.
And whereas classic Simpsons had this ability to not be so heavy-handed and to be subtle and have engaging characters that weren't lazy, and everything made narrative sense and it flowed from scene to scene and then it collects together in a cohesive loveliness. And none of that is here.
I have to agree. There was a point where we had been away for the Roz plot for a while. And I'm just like, when are we getting back to that? What's happening with that?
Yeah.
And then we're back again. And I started thinking at that point, how is this going to tie together? Because it feels like in the classic era, they would have brought it all together, right?
Yeah, even
They
in
would
a
have made it
silly
all make
way.
sense. In a silly way, and in an arbitrary way, but you've been satisfying. It's all back
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And it never happens.
No.
And that's what provoked my fury, was the episode ends and they just have made no attempt
Oh
to
my God.
link anything together. And I was just like, this is a
The-
travesty of writing.
The
It's
episode
awful.
ends with a DreamWorks fucking dance party.
Yeah.
Like everyone just goes into a silly dance, and I'm like, that's
Even the funeral directors.
yeah,
Why?
That's even bad when DreamWorks does it. But like, at least like Megamind is a children's film, and like,
Yeah.
and they paid for that music, so I guess they could do something with it. But
And I
it's
mean,
just,
I always love to hear Bowie, but
yeah,
There
it's-
is like a kernel of something to me in the way Bart is treated in this episode, in that Bart is like a chronic underachiever, but he actually really wants
he wants to do something.
to do something
Yeah.
and be recognized and succeed. He's
Yeah.
just held back by his limitations. And the fact that, he goes out of his way to find someone who knows what they're doing and team up with them and achieve something, it feels like a Bart of old. It feels
Yeah.
like a kind of classic
Yeah.
era
Well,
Bart.
that's one of my favorite episodes where Bart gets an F. Like that's
Yeah.
that's emotionally distraught because
Very
of how,
poorly
but
emotional.
also how true is that to how you feel as a child, where you're like, I did try, and
Yeah.
this was the one time that I tried, and like, yeah, they kind of, I guess, maybe touched on that. I feel like we're doing all the work for them. We're extrapolating to like get to that.
yeah, well, we have to. Like, there is a kernel of that where Bart, like, you can call it acting out as a form of attention, but now he's getting attention attention for positive action, so he's not acting out.
Yeah, like he does make the choice to like, even though our seals went rogue, we got to fix this. Like we want to get them back to the old people. Like that's
Remove
nice.
the fucking evil plug, though. God damn it.
Yeah.
Just take it away.
It is a plug that is unused otherwise.
But also, like, there's a lot of complex robotics that has to go in to be able to organize a seal to go for the throat.
Yeah.
Like, Martin,
They programmed
put that in there.
It always does go for the throat. Also, why did you make it with sharp teeth?
Yes.
It reminded me of those. Have you seen those like cute little animal toys that like you push a button and then it goes all evil face?
No, I
Yeah.
haven't. I think I'd love that.
So yes or no, would you watch this one again?
Oh, God, no.
Nah.
That's a no.
No, we're not going to watch this again, but we'll start with you, Phil. Is there anything you'd like to change?
I would throw out the entire Roz plot and double down into the Bart-Lisa relationship and look at Bart trying to achieve something, but his best efforts kind of turning against him.
Yeah.
At the same time, explore Lisa's relationship and her coming around to the idea that Bart can achieve good things and that she maybe needs to review how she looks at him.
Yeah. How about you, Sean?
Yeah, this Roswell doesn't end well, so I figure
Nice.
like I would axe out the A plot as well. Like it's just not needed. If you're not going to use Jane Lynch effectively, fucking don't.
Yeah.
Maybe make her the voice of the seal if you want a cute little voice. I don't know.
That would be kind of cute.
Right? and I think you can have a whole episode around like how this affects, for example, if you want to have an emotional tie-in to that like senior citizen problem, use Abe. Use the family's connection to Abe and the fact that he's in a home. They put him there. And then how he's been directly affected by this. And like lean into that. Like you don't always have to have a B plot. Like you can have just a streamlined narrative and there's enough there to expound upon.
Sure.
Nah, fuck the A plot. One plot away.
Yeah.
How about you, Ellen? What would you
they
like to change?
said, the A plot is not only terrible, it is actively harmful, and it's just a joke that women shouldn't. It's just terrible. It's terrible. I'm not going to go into it more because fuck that. I'm not wasting my energy. There's more to be said about the way that we treat senior citizens. There's more to be said about how we can use technology to enhance life. I think the funeral directors could be more of an antagonist because, as morbid as it is, there's money to be had by people dying, and there's money to be had by the diminishing value of life as you get older.
And, cutting costs in nursing homes and stuff. I mean, this is quite topical. Sorry to interrupt your segment.
How dare you?
I know,
oh
I'm
my
sorry.
goodness. Is this because I'm a woman? I pointed out that you were shit at your job.
Hug.
I just wanted to say that issue which you're highlighting is something that's particularly pertinent to us in South Australia, where there's been a lot of scandal around the way our nursing homes are run.
People act in nursing homes. Yes, exactly. And for people who can't fight back and whose families have kind of forgotten about them, or maybe they don't have families, and it's a sad thing. I think we can comment on it. I think Simpsons back in the heyday, I think they definitely would have had something pertinent to say and something truthful and also something a bit funny, because there's not to say that you can't, like, that's absurdism. That's where clowning comes from. It takes from using situations that we all recognize and going, isn't this ridiculous? To show you how ridiculous it is, I'm just going to scale it to 11 so you can be like, that's real.
Yeah.
And also, I just wish that Lisa was used because, we have an academic thing. We have a problem that needs solving. We have her little...
Coming second,
Exactly. Yeah. She does not deal with that. Remember when there was when she had her friend and her friend was smarter than her?
Yeah.
It's like a big thing for her to get over her own ego. And I think we could have had a lot of fun there. And maybe she and Bart could have teamed up. I find it really fun when they do team up.
I love Bart-Lisa team up episodes.
Yeah.
It's great.
And what I'd change, we've hit on it already, that the two plots have nothing to do with each other. And if you were going to tie them together, I'd say there is a little thing with Bart and Homer actually trying for once. So Homer gets his position usurped at the power plant, and he is forced to try now. You can have a parallel with him and Bart and at least tie it together.
If you were going to go with that one of Homer being demoted and him having to be like, oh shit, this actually affects my family and my paycheck and blah, blah, blah. And there would have been a nice way to be like, Homer does actually have useful skills.
Yeah.
He's got experience or something. He's been there such a long time. He doesn't know that he's actually quite good.
Yeah.
It's become ingrained second nature to him.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, actually, I know how to do all this.
Yeah. And maybe it's cutting cost thing or whatever, but maybe you shouldn't respond to the emergency alarm. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's actually the theory that we hit on when we did Burns Verkaufen de Kraft, when Burns sells a power plant to a German conglomerate, and safety is a priority for them, and they realize they're going to break the bank bringing this plan up to code, so they sell it back to Mr. Burns. And that's the thing. Homer's the safety inspector.
much.
Yeah.
He's been overlooking all these costs over the years,
yeah.
so he keeps the plan cost effective. I know it's like
It
not
could be,
actually demonstrable skills,
But
but
like, it's a funny way to like show that actually Homer, there's a reason he's here.
Yeah.
It's like the Fry missing a brainwave thing. Like, there's a clever third option there that,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and we've tossed out many ideas.
And just don't have Roz as a bogeyman. Just don't
Yeah.
do
Can
it.
I have a question? Can I have a question?
No.
Can I borrow a feeling?
yeah.
How? Because I zoned out during these brief seconds that I needed, integral seconds. How did they shoehorn the fact that Flanders knows Roz?
They went on a Bible camp
Bible
together.
camp.
And how did he know that that's who Homer was talking about? Wasn't it just a throwaway line that, my boss is
He
giving...
described a tall woman.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
That is it.
out of everyone in Springfield, he knew who he was talking about.
Jane Lynch is the only tall woman in the world. We
Yeah,
know
cool, that
this
checks
to
out.
be true.
Done. I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, Roz is not a bad person.
No,
Like, when
no.
we're introduced, she offers, like, to buy drinks for everyone. And then is it Lenny or Carl who says, actually, can I have the cash value
Yeah,
of that drink? And
He
she's like,
gives it to
sure.
her.
I don't mind. Like,
She's mean to Homer.
but she's not mean. She like,
Can I go and see a movie? Sure, but I'm going to tell your boss.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
any employee
That's
should.
absolutely
But when she has the
fine.
position of power, she makes him write a list.
Because he was
Oh.
late. And how dare you?
my other coworkers come late to like swap shifts with me, and I want to fucking kill them. So her being like,
But you're right, it's paper thin.
her being like, write a list of all the wrong things that, or like ways that I can make your job miserable. Like, sure, you know, maybe
Yeah.
why do they make Bart write lines? Apart from just bad ways to deal with children, like things that don't actually teach them. But the idea is that it will teach him into good behavior.
If it didn't work for Fallout, it's not going to work.
No. They had they gave themselves about 2 minutes to develop a character.
Yeah, it's
So what are they going to do?
Well, that's the problem of having the two stories, especially that don't interconnect, is you're just taking time away from each other, and like integral character development and plot development that's
Yeah.
just so sorely missing. All right, we're in the final stretch. Phil, do you have any other notes?
There was a few little references in when building the robot. So they throw in a picture of Bender. They throw a little Terminator arm.
Yep, that's one of the reason I brought this one to you.
Yeah, there's a picture of Bender, there's Terminator arm, and there's half the Slinky Dog
from Toy Story, yeah.
I thought that was nice, not too in your face, just a nice little cute kind of reference gag where you just go, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well done for sneaking those in. I like that. Fisteroid. I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah?
I thought it was quite funny.
Fisteroid in your face.
Fisteroid
Fist on
hitting
your
the
face.
planet nerd.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, that's stupid, and he's got it. And
It's a
nice.
good misdirect.
It's a payoff.
Yeah.
Where he was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh,
Actually,
I
yeah, I liked the model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really didn't care for his whole synthesizing the cooties shot.
and the
And the
morning
cooties
after
patch.
cootie
Morning
shot.
after, yeah.
Oh, the patch was a preventative. That's a morning after. What the fuck?
More of an adult jokes for
Yeah.
kids thing.
Also,
yeah.
you don't get vaccinated against babies, so that metaphor doesn't even fucking work. like, do you know what I mean? Like, you don't get a contraceptive shot.
Why not? Show your work.
While we've lost Ellen, I do have one more.
Yeah, keep,
I would like to get vaccinated for babies.
What's the implant?
It's not a vaccine.
There's another joke in there that really annoyed me.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ellen. Are we just going to wait for Ellen to recover?
No, you go.
Go,
Okay,
over,
okay.
go over her laughter.
So they go to Professor Frink and they go, oh, we need you to help. And he goes, I've got a date with a
Yeah.
Miss Wyoming.
Miss Wyoming.
Miss Wyoming. And he cancels that. And she's, oh. And the joke is, oh, nerdy people don't get girls.
Is it the same joke from Treehouse of Horror where the witch is like, I have a boyfriend, and they're like, what's his name? And she's like,
John Cauldron?
John
Yeah.
Cauldron. And then he does turn up at the end.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like
It's a similar joke,
it's
but
a similar joke, but it doesn't work.
it's just a punching down joke where like smart people who are a bit intellectual can't get women.
Yeah.
And it's just such an
I mean,
outdated concept.
yeah.
Like it's just not true.
No.
Like I don't find that hilarious. I'm like, well, Professor Fink's probably like a really nice guy and has like good conversation. 'cause
I
it's
get
interesting.
hot women all the time.
I don't
Hey, I've seen
believe
you with
he's a
hot girls.
nice guy. I
No.
believe he's a nice guy in quotations.
I don't believe that about Frink. I think maybe he's a bit pedantic. I don't think he's like
An
a
incel.
milady.
I
don't think that about
Can I
him.
follow that into one of my notes? Is Professor Frink a big player in the later seasons? Because he's popped up now in a fairly significant manner in this episode and in Simpsorama for our podcast.
Well, he's single.
Like it's because Frink was. I didn't see.
I don't think he means player. I think he means he's like important
Oh.
character.
I didn't see him a lot in earlier seasons. Is he like a big supporting character now?
I think this is just, coincidence of the last
Right.
two episodes, but like the sort of B and below characters of The Simpsons are more just sort of cutaway jokes to do the really tropey, cliche, outdated bullshit. And
Okay.
and with Frink, it's the case of he goes with hot women all the time, or he does his oig vagey, rady datey
Jerry
routine.
Lewis impression, yeah.
There is a particular joke that I did enjoy, which is completely in keeping with Homer's character, which is his instruction to, if you're going to use the coffee machine, just leave a little bit at the bottom, so you're not the one that has to change
That is
it.
classic co-worker
It's
behavior.
observational humor. right?
When there's a burning smell, they'll know.
That feels like Stephanie Gillis is getting out like a gripe from the writers' room. Like, did you have any other notes, Ellen?
Yeah, sure, I have a few. Okay, so
Buckle up.
I used to do roller derby.
Oh, cool.
My roller derby name was Ellie Bean. Like jelly bean, get it,
Get it. Yep.
Lots of people
name's
didn't for
Ellen.
weird reasons. I don't know. I thought it was pretty obvious, but I've got two more from this episode. So Gloomhilda, I quite enjoy, and also Goliath. Yeah. So if you're an up and coming roller derby person
Snap 'em up.
or a burlesque artist and you want a nom de plume, there you go.
And I've already taken Goliath now, so you've only got one more.
What about okay, whoops. Well, you've got Gloomhilda. I actually think gravy would pair probably well with Twinkie.
Yeah, you got the sweet and the salty.
Yeah, because Twinkies are so... I've tried one once. It's so overly sweet. It's sickening. It's really disgusting. And the cream is so artificial as well. So I think having something savory to cut through would actually probably improve it.
Yeah.
Pods in the Key of Springfield. That can be one of your My Shorts episodes.
Now you're going to have to do it. There's a bit of a canon thing. I thought we agreed that Skinner wasn't the biological child of Mrs. Skinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or are they just really going along with the
she-
line?
Yeah.
So he was a 4-month gestation.
Yeah. Look, the Simpsons writers' big defense for the whole Armin Tanzarian thing is
It's against
that,
the law to mention it, so they really have to go into the lie.
right.
Maybe.
that it's an episode that takes place within itself. It is not canon to the rest of the series like a Treehouse of Horror, but
But there's nothing in the episode that says that.
that's the obvious argument against it. So, and there's been subsequent episodes since then where Agnes talks about having Skinner in the womb and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, right. They were that embarrassed by that episode, they were like, we're just writing it out of the can.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's fair.
All right, it's time for my final notes. Homer's whole thing about the checks are getting smaller and smaller, and I don't mean in physical size. Stop wasting my fucking time.
Marge even says that. She's
Yeah,
like, shut up.
Yeah.
When Homer gets the trophy stuck on his head and Smithers is putting butter up it and he's eating it, The Simpsons have done that joke when Homer gets the bucket stuck on his head.
Yeah.
That's like a whole plot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, it just takes the thing of her trying to pull it off.
Yeah.
It's
Oh.
like 30, 40
It's a 30
seconds.
second gag that runs its course
Way
after the
too
first
long.
second.
Again,
Way
this
too
is
long.
time that's so weighted in these drawn-out gags that could have been used for a more satisfying plot. And what the fuck was with the Jetsons cutaway joke?
Oh my God.
And why
Yeah.
are the seals watching it? Like, what's
Also,
the reason they're watching it?
I didn't realize this, but is the Harley Quinn voice basically the maid from Jetsons? Because I swear to God, she even says, Mr. J. I know he's
Oh, wow,
Mr. Jetson,
yeah.
but she's like, gee, Mr. J, I'm going to run out of blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
Harley Quinn's voice.
What even is the gag in this episode, though? Like,
You got to help me get my green card or else they'll turn me into a washing machine.
That's right.
oh,
really
it's-
bad.
It's a dodgy immigration joke.
yeah.
This is
Okay.
another segment for the podcast. This is another point I tuned out
Yeah.
for the Jetsons. I just missed that whole thing. And then I was like, oh, why the Okay.
All right, it's time to rank this thing. On the Simpsons Index, we rank using our 6-point scale, which starts down the bottom at failure. Maybe if the episode was just, you give it participant. But for the positive rankings, you got okay bronze, good silver, excellent gold. But for the best of the very best, you give cubic zirconia. I'm going to go first. Let me show you how it's done. I am going to give this a participant. There's a lot that I hate about this episode, but it doesn't quite get me down into the hate-fueling anger that is a failure for me. And I think the seals actually do bring it up quite a bit. And, when I think about maybe I should give it a fail, I just keep picturing those eyes. And I'm like, no, just a participant. You're just meh. Ellen, what do you reckon?
Failure. No, and I do really enjoy the seals as well. But like the active harm that this episode does and like the terrible politics it buys into. It's just any good that it may have done is negated by the shit that it does. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Failure for me.
Phil.
See, I was leaning participant, but actually, I think I'm going to go failure.
Yeah, join the team.
On the strength of that argument. I was going to go participant because it has like a kernel of some good ideas, like the things that I would change, like leaning into the Bart-Lisa plot and exploring what that means for their relationship and Bart's relationship with effort and success. But they waste that. They don't actually do anything with it. And while there are some good animation elements, the Roz plot is so deplorable, I think it just slams it into failure for me.
Yep.
All right, and finish it off, Sean.
I'm going to grab a seal with you and I'm going to go to participant. No, yeah, like there's enough here bookended where they did actually give me a few chuckles. Like I love the itchy and scratchy. I love everything to do with the science fair through the visual gags, through seeing, what's his name? He's the long-haired bully, but he has the toupee dar. Dolph has a toupee dar. Nelson's got the best gag of the damn episode.
I like pubes. Who's got them? Personally, that's my fave.
Like, despite what they end up getting into, I like the interaction between Homer and Ned, which is when you can see that Homer's actually down. Ned's like, "Oh, idly diddlies aside, how you doing?"
I'm gonna use that in everyday life. Oh, diddlies aside, how you doing today?
And there are bits in the one plot that I really enjoy, and I thought it had the spark of something great. It's not enough for me to call it an abysmal failure, even though any chance of it being above a participant was ripped apart by Mambler and anything to do with Roz and the A-plot. It's just, participant for me.
All right, well, averaging out, this will make this one a dull participant. This will be joining other such episodes as Waiting for Duffman, where Homer becomes the new Duffman, and they make him become sober. That's a fun one.
Everyone
when
just
the
shrugged
fuck did that happen?
Bart's New Friend, where Homer gets hypnotized into thinking he's 10 years old and he becomes Bart's new friend.
Oh, God.
Written by Judd Apatow.
I heard your episode on that. That sounded fun.
Yeah. Fun. Also be joining Don't Fear the Roofer, where Ray Romano guest stars as a roofer.
Ray Romano.
Which ends up
fucking...
he'd been seeing him through a portal or some sort of weird science.
Everyone thinks Homer's imagining this person, and they explain him not appearing in the hardware store by a fucking Futurama-esque.
Fuck, that's right. I hate that episode.
Wow.
That's just like the Rick and Morty thing with the guy on the moon, right?
Which guy on the moon?
Yeah. That guy really looked like a smudge. All right, guys, before we move on to the teens era, is that reputation justified? Oh, you guys don't know my theme song.
Is that reputation justified?
That's good. Nice. All right. Writing for the AV Club, Hayden Childs gave this episode a C-. Now, on their scale, that's roughly where we went with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Their C's are bads. There are some comic possibility and resonance in having Homer stabbed in the back at work. Unfortunately, Homer may not be the best character to give this sort of storyline a heart. Homer is a bad employee who deserves to be ratted out by his subordinate.
Yep.
The fact that she is so selfish and mean doesn't add to this story. Yes, that is the sort of person who would stab someone in the back for their own game, but yes, Homer had it coming. Where's the joke?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm with the AV Club.
Agree with that, except a C is satisfactory, so they should really adjust their scale.
All right, guys, it's time to move on to the teens era, and we're going to review Bart versus Lisa versus the third grade. We'll be back.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, okay, cool.
I remember enjoying this
See you in
episode
a
as a kid.
bit.
Bye.
Bye.
And we are back, and we just watched our teens era episode, which was Season 14, Episode 3, Bart versus Lisa versus the third grade. First released in November of '02, it was directed by Stephen Dean Moore, written by Tim Long. In this episode, Lisa does really well on a test and gets bumped up to the third grade, and also Bart does really bad on a test and gets pushed down to the third grade.
Whoop.
And then they get lost on a field trip to Capital City. What do we think?
Wacky hijinks ensue.
Love it.
Yeah.
So much fun. Really enjoyed it.
Hey, this has a beginning, a middle, and end. It has
Right.
3 acts.
Yep.
Yes.
It has
It has
a
3
narrative.
acts, yeah.
Streamlined. It's simple.
It's funny.
There's heart.
Yeah.
People learn things and
Yeah.
grow.
They grow.
They learn to fart.
But
Can I just say, because you told me ahead of time what these 3 episodes were going to be, and as soon as you mentioned Bart vs. Lisa, I went, the one thing I remember from this episode is,
oh Oh,
which is
the
the noise
unfurling.
of Governor Bailey turning around the leather fart.
Yeah.
So I have that noise embedded
She's
into
so
my head.
offended by learning
Why
to
does she
fart.
show the class though? Is she so horrified? Is my question though.
She's so horrified.
If I'm going to suffer, you have to too. When did you say this came out? What year?
First released in 2002.
02.
02. So
How
that's
young
like,
were we?
That's when I first got Foxtel. That's actually the year I got
I
Foxtel.
was in grade 2.
Oh, wow.
2002, grade 2. That's how I remember
So for me, it
it.
was very much because during that time, Simpsons was like, we got it direct. And so this episode especially was very much like that's pretty much what I'm watching it on right now. Just endless channels of mostly inane shit and channels that don't need to be their own
I
channel.
love Touch the Stove as a reality TV show. I find it hilarious. Like, I did a whole theatre show once based off stupid game show conceits.
Yeah.
And, like, Touch the Stove would have been something that we would have put in there where it's just like, oh, what do you do? Anyway, now touch the stove! Someone's just screaming for ages.
As we mentioned, like, we're actors, right?
Yeah.
And this whole thing of
Are we?
like, allegedly,
Paid? Question mark on that one.
this whole
Which
thing,
means we're actors.
this whole thing of this cheap programming takes money and rolls away
From writers
and
and
actors,
actors.
right?
Yes.
And it feels really like
There's a big problem
It
with
hits
it.
close to home.
yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Big problem here in Australia as well, since
Yeah.
most of any of our creative stuff is usually just imported anyway, so it's American shows and blah blah blah.
Everything else is
And-
home
yeah.
makeover shows
Yeah.
and Survivor
Cooking
knockoffs,
shows.
cooking shows.
Yeah, cops busting drunk drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Border
Fucking
security. Yeah, it's
all
ridiculous.
that stuff. Yeah.
All right, let's hook into the question.
Let's talk about Simpsons,
After
maybe.
episode we watched,
So, Animal Survivor.
the Clock Channel.
Coming up, 6 o'clock. Oh, I've seen this
I've
one.
seen this one.
We'll start with you this time, Ellen. For better or worse, what's something that stands out to you from this episode?
Well, I laughed for like, what was it, 10 seconds straight. Like, I couldn't breathe. Lisa was reading a book called Love in the Time of Coloring Books.
What?
It's
I
a
missed this.
parody of Love in the Time of Cholera, which is it's a famous piece of literature. It's also a romance, and I just lost my shit. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with it, but that...
Neither am I.
I couldn't fucking breathe. Like, it was so good.
It's a bit of a literary touchstone, Love in the Time
Yeah.
of Cholera. Yeah, it's a sort of tragic romantic story, right?
Yeah,
I haven't read
yeah.
it myself, but
Also, I love Bart's mnemonic device of... I just wrote down the fucking acronym, but I can't actually remember.
Quiet nerds burp only near school.
Only
Yeah.
near school, yeah. And I had a similar one because we had to remember the first 30 elements of the periodic table.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, hi, here lies Susie, Nina. It made no sense whatsoever. Like, there was no way to remember it apart from the way that we
that's-
just remembered it. Like,
Yeah.
it's the wonderful joke. They get more and more absurd every time
Yeah.
he does them.
Yeah,
They're just
yeah.
completely unmemorable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a thing that we all kind of... It's
We
one of
all-
those shared jokes,
That's
right?
how I remembered them.
Wednesday's Mabel.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's such a wonderful joke that touches everybody, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
all know that thing of learning mnemonics
Yeah.
at school that make no sense.
I'm cheating because I have more than one moment, but also the cable company being like, "Are you available from 8 a.m. till June?"
Yeah.
Yes, that
and
is
then
a
they
great
fix
joke.
it in September.
Yeah, the smash cut title card September.
Yeah.
Anyone who's had to have any sort of work person come to their place knows this fucking feeling.
Yeah, that's probably me.
How about you, Sean? What's something about this episode stands out to you for better or worse?
The first 10 seconds from the moment that Survivor gag comes on, I had this mental note in my head that went, this is going to be a good episode. Because the gag is random, but it fucking makes sense. There's natural progression. It's witty.
It's an observation of actual life.
Yep. And it narratively ties into the theme, one of the themes of the
Yeah.
episode. Like the nature of shit television and reality TV. And how fucking funny is it to talk about a breakdown of the lion and gazelle connection? So good.
And timed well as well.
Yeah. And they don't dwell on the joke for too long either. Like every joke is just expertly paced.
Yeah,
And
it's very fast. It cracks along.
Yeah.
by expert, I just mean there's a bit of restraint. It's like,
Yeah.
we know this
Yeah.
is funny. There's the joke. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about, where the line between good and bad Simpsons is a lot more blurry than people give it credit for, because this is season 14. I mean, it's certainly where the show definitely starts dipping, and, you know, I did an episode with Pods in the Kia Springfield recently from season 14, which we called a unanimous failure, so... But this one, yeah, it stands alone.
It's the thing that you're talking about is because it's not that there's a line where Zombie Simpsons comes in, but it's where the likelihood of there being a great episode just becomes less and less and less, instead of it being a surefire hit.
Yeah.
Basically.
I like that. Yeah, the odds shift.
Yeah.
How about you, Phil? What's something about this episode stands out to you, for better or worse?
Just on the end of Sean's, for me, the bit that was really classic about the section you highlighted is actually in the next little vignette where they start talking, the very astute observation of the way they talk to guests. Oh, so you like to collect bottle caps or whatever.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. It's just
Yeah.
like the complete inanity and then bam, hand on the stove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
Great.
cut under it. But yeah, it was the same thing, but there was a different part of it that really got me.
Yeah, it reminds me of one time I was watching The Price is Right, and a guy called Nigel got all the way to the end, and his big hook was that he had every single Tarzo.
Wow.
That is a lot of Tarzos.
That's
Nigel the Tarzo
I
collector.
also don't believe that's a universal reference. Like, it's Australia.
I don't even know what Tarzo
A
is.
Tarzo, like, is little collected, like, you collect it.
Is it like a
in-
pog?
Like a,
yeah,
no,
yeah, Australian pog.
But it's,
Yeah.
like it's like a thinner disc that's in a
It's just a
hexagon
disc.
shape.
Some were in hexagon, some had like little divots that you could connect them up, but like
There was Slammer Tarzos, which is a slightly bigger one, so you could play
Yeah,
Tarzo
and
as
they
a game,
came
but
in
no one
chi-
did.
They
Yeah, it
came
was
in
a pog-
chip
a
packets.
pog ripoff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chip packets.
Do you remember the Space Jam Tarzo?
Yeah.
I
they
definitely
were the
remember the
3D
Space
ones.
Jam
We collected
Tarzos.
the whole thing. We had the
Holographic.
book.
Fuck me up, fam.
Yeah.
So I have two things.
Sorry.
That's all right. So I have two things to highlight. My favorite one-liner, which is sobbing only pushes Bart's grade higher.
Oh my god, that's so brilliant.
And it comes on the back of a kind of rising tide
Yeah.
of jokes. It's about
Yeah,
the
we
way
don't
that
appreciate tattletales.
it's part of the way the jokes are structured in this,
Yeah.
where they form their own little moments that they build onto the crescendo and then they get out.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
out of the gag and you move on. And when it culminates like that in something slightly absurd that just fits,
But
that was
it's
really
also-
satisfying.
It's also, there's the truth of it is there, because I remember, like, sometimes in school, even though they tell you, you need to tell a teacher if this kind of thing happens. And I remember so many times when you would be like, they're picking their nose, or like you'd be like, this behavior is, I'm finding it weird, and they'd be like, we don't like tattletales here. or
Yeah.
something.
You told me
And it's
to
like,
tell you. What fucking lesson is
and
that?
I was like,
Mixed
is this,
messages.
Yeah, is this a prison or fucking what? Or when they'd be like, you need to stop crying, or something. Like Lisa's
Snitches
yeah.
get stitches.
Lisa's crying is quite upsetting.
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
absurd, but it's also, there's like a truth there at the heart of it, where being a child is so often so confusing.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
adults tell you these things, but then also 1 second later will contradict them and be like, "Nah, sorry, the system don't work, bitch."
Well, especially in the position of Bart. Now, I'm going to say that's the moment of the story that stands out to me is Bart's whole involvement with this whole thing, where he's doing really well because he's been here
He's
before.
done it.
And it makes sense, but it also doesn't, because he's not the best
He shouldn't
student.
have paid attention the first
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Like, I'm assuming he only just scraped by into the 4th grade as well, potentially.
Yeah.
So, like, did he know enough that he, like, surely he didn't write it all down. He would have written anything down.
But
Yeah.
the idea that he just remembered the answer key, AABB, AABB,
Yeah.
true, false, Williams, Jennings, whatever.
Yeah.
Then maybe there's a thing in there where like Bart maybe has a bit more potential than he gives himself
Yeah,
credit for.
well, because clearly he has a good memory. He might
Yeah.
not be able to apply that memory in a problem-solving way like Lisa can, because when she gets the question about the rooster, she's like, well, if you take in these facts into
Yeah.
account, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Bart is immediately like, no, I remember this. It's a rooster. So, like,
Yeah.
therefore, that critical thinking is not necessary. Like, clearly Bart has strengths that Lisa does not.
yes. Yeah.
That was a weird one for me, though, because it's like, that's not really education. That's just
it
a
does
riddle.
remind me a lot of
Yeah.
Yeah.
dumb questions you would get in
Yeah.
school, where it's like blah blah blah
Like,
blah blah. And
what does
then
that teach you as well? Is that if you say, I know the answer, haha, fooled you,
You're-
kid.
fucking idiot, sit down.
Fucking open your ears. Listen.
In 3rd grade as well, humiliating
You're
children.
embarrassing yourself.
I really wanted to highlight as well, just, there was a section early on I feel like needs highlighting, because it's part of this like absurdist humor that really appeals to me personally, and I think fits within the context of the show, is the monkey switchboard.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
I have to talk about the monkey switchboard, and so beautiful, so fragile.
Is this a reference? Feels referencey.
Maybe it's something sci-fi
Yeah.
or something like a famous astronaut said, but it didn't.
I was guessing 2001 because I
That's
haven't
what I
seen
was
that.
thinking, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
But it just, that going off the rails into something so patently absurd.
Yeah.
But just keeping it grounded
It
enough.
doesn't, it's
brilliant.
not random
Walks-
enough to be Family Guy.
No.
Because it's not a cutaway.
No.
It's like, it's part of the narrative.
It's a clowning. It's a continuation of a joke that's just a step so far that you're like, what? How did we end up here?
It's like touch the stove is fucking random if you take out the fact that it makes sense within the thematic nature of the whole episode. It just nothing is random for the sake of random.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
And like the first act, we've hit on this concept a lot on the Index, where often the first act will just be a fuck you, where they'll just like, here's 1/3 of a story, fuck you, we're pivoting and we're going to something else. Where, this one tied in. The reason Bart is in the 3rd grade was because he stayed up for a fortnight watching TV.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I also have a question, just as far as early on. Just brainstorm this with me, please. What would generate not only a lump in the side of your neck, but one that is pulsating?
I'm going to go with Parasite.
That's what I'm leaning towards.
Parasite? Yeah.
That's a fucking
You
parasite
think it's
in
like
his
a mummy
neck.
level scarab beetle under the skin,
Yeah,
like
something
skidding
like that's a
around?
good call,
I
yeah.
think it might be a twin.
A vestigial twin.
A vestigial twin that maybe he has there's muscle in there, so Homer can actually whether he's aware of it or not start twitching it. I don't
one
know.
of the Futurama mutants has
Yeah, maybe.
So then would he name it Hoju?
Play count. How many times have you seen this episode before today?
I've definitely seen it more than once. I think maybe between 3 and 5.
3 and 5?
Between 4 3/4 and 9.5.
I reckon I say probably about twice.
Platform
4 or
9 and
5.
3/4.
4 or 5 times. I remember this one quite vividly.
I may have seen this 10 times. I actually like season 4 quite a bit. I think there's, it's not the best seasons, but it's definitely a good hangover season, So let's talk about some of the wacky elements of this episode. What was some of the cartoony stuff that stood out to you?
Bart's feverish dream, in
It's
the middle of
finally
class,
happened, Bart. You've lost your mind.
which has
Hover.
Japanese friends, Pikachu,
Pikachu.
Bender, the Rumble robots. Am I
Yeah.
missing anyone?
All singing Hover Nagila.
Yeah.
Pikachu has been like a mainstream reference for so long. I didn't realize.
Yeah, right.
Pikachu doesn't have a nose, does he? I'm trying to think what's different
No.
about that Pikachu. Does Pikachu have a nose?
No,
in
Pikachu
his-
has a little mouse nose. Well, not mouse because it's flat to the face, but a little triangle.
Yeah, his
but-
mouth is way bigger in the
Yeah,
Simpsons
that's what-
design.
That's what looks weird.
And also his eyes are almost a Funko Pop doll sort of
Yeah.
eye.
Yeah.
I mean, Pikachu generally has quite large eyes, right?
Yeah.
There's just something more
Proportionally.
oval about them as opposed to being circular. I don't
Yeah.
know.
actually,
They're
that's a good
more
point.
they're more ovals than circles.
Yeah.
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 So we see Bender in this as
Yeah.
well, which is why
Yeah.
I brought
Yeah.
it for you guys. And he's got a weird off-model moment as well, where his eyes
Yeah.
are white. It's just so unsettling.
His arms are a bit longer than they appear later as well, and a bit more
I
wobbly.
mean, it is a fever dream. So.
Yeah.
I guess Bender's I don't know, maybe he's on he's jacked in, when he goes on robo drugs.
Oh, yeah.
He's on the robots. That's what high Bender looks like.
Yeah. So this bit as well is actually a bit of Australian TV history here. Futurama used to be on Channel 7 while Simpsons was on Channel 10. And because of the licensing of the characters, they couldn't actually show this scene on Channel 10.
Really?
So
Really?
it used to just cut from Bart, you've lost your mind, straight until Bart laughing. They skipped the whole Harvard
That's
Nagira bit.
crazy.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
not as fun.
You've
No.
done it, Bart. That just is more creepy than anything.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah, just to finish off the whole TV bit, there were 2 jokes that I didn't like. I wasn't a big fan of the Japanese friends thing.
I thought it was okay.
I
don't
kind
know.
of want to watch it.
I quite like just the visual gag of them in the fountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't like them going into it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like it landed that joke very well.
There's one joke I'm definitely not a fan of. I wonder if you can tell what the fuck it is.
The rock and roll hairstyle.
No, it's the bulimia one.
With Dan Rather. Yeah,
That's
was-
horrible.
Yeah. They do it twice.
They do it twice, and I've gone off a tangent on our podcast as well about portraying body dysmorphia and eating disorders as a fucking joke, and it's
As a punchline,
fucking
yeah.
not
Yeah,
like
nah.
it's.
Because it's also completely fucking random. There's no
Yeah.
reason for it to be a
There's
newscaster.
no
You're not highlighting anything. It's just, hey, it's behind the scenes. What if he's vomiting into a bucket because he thinks it's fat? It's funny, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they're doing a sort of a spoof on Dan Rather, so maybe their thinking was, wouldn't it be funny if he was this way? But
And also, no, it
but,
wouldn't.
but
It's
no,
not.
it's
That's
not.
the answer.
Well, it's
It's
like
not
with the
funny.
Japanese friends thing. I actually find it more funny because I'm a massive Friends fan and I've watched
Yeah.
10 scenes, so I find that funny. I do agree that I would take it out. Just, flip through the channels, just see the intro. That's all you need. Like, and then you can still have the gag and the nightmare scene where he sees him in the fountain because that's his frame of reference. Like, it's not needed. You can trim the fat a bit.
Yeah.
When they first get to Capital City and they have to hold hands, there's some bullies,
Oh,
some
yes.
old-timey
Oh,
bullies
yeah.
come up to bully them, and they have like a 40s car
Yeah.
for no reason.
In their
also-
bomber jacket and
yeah, it's really strange.
I also found it kind of funny because it's those jokes that like aren't funny at all. And it's like, who
Yeah.
are you really making fun of here when they're like, oh, is that your girlfriend? And then like they stop holding hands. It's like, oh, did your girlfriend break up with you? And it's
Yeah.
like, that joke
Well,
is so
my note says those dickheads exist.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
definitely.
Oh,
And that's like,
sure.
that's why I laugh. I'm like, fuck, like this isn't even a parody. It's just is.
I love Nelson's commitment to laughing at jerks.
Yeah.
He just appears twice. He appears on the field trip, right? And then also in class to laugh at Lisa and Bart. And then the teacher both times just goes, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
He's like, laughing at jerks.
and then the bike line is just
Bike.
Yeah.
mwah. It's really good.
This actually goes back
Huh.
to something that we didn't mention in the last episode where, Nelson just appeared in Bart's room. And that one didn't land, but these ones do. And yeah.
Well, they do
Yeah.
this with a lot of their characters that only pop up once or twice.
Yeah.
All of the jokes are in keeping with who they are. Like the Willy joke, I love
that
that.
Yeah.
Millhouse, great use of your Millhouse. He's not some creepy watching you sleep. He's a guy who's trying to be cool and trying to get attention. He's trying to be Bart.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can be Bart without being a creepy
Yeah,
fuck.
he's like got hero worship going on. He's
What
like,
was the Willy joke?
The Willy joke was, it's always the kids with the long nails.
oh yes,
Oh, just the fact that they have a gigantic field
Yeah.
trip memorial is brilliant.
like children lost on field trips.
That is too many for an elementary school.
Also, how great is that line where it's like, the buddy system.
Never
Foolproof.
fails. Yeah.
So on that field trip Lost People wall, you can see the names El Jefe and Fat Mike that are written there, and they're from NoFX, the punk rock band.
Oh, I was gonna say Fat Mike. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's
It's just such
sly.
a weird note, like because most of the other names are just nonsense, but for some reason they included Fat Mike and El Jefe.
sure. Why not?
I really wanted to highlight, given the political climate that we have now, the Confederate flag joke.
Oh yeah, especially
That is
since
just
we're
like,
a northern state.
Yeah. I mean, that's a nice absurd turn on it. But you're like, oh God, this
Yeah.
is
And
And also,
really like...
where they're like the capital city goofball. He spent $80 million to get in office, and I'm like, why do I remember that?
Oh my goodness.
And it also goes into the main point of the story as well, which is the relationship between Bart and Lisa, which I adore. Like
Yeah.
anytime
Yeah,
he's
it's
like, they're just kids after all. They're gonna bicker and fight
Yeah.
over the stupidest things, but at the heart, like they have to look after each other in the end.
Yeah.
It's really lovely.
And this whole thing, like, we talk about the absurd moments, but so many of these moments are just really true. Like, Lisa being embarrassed by Bart on stage in front of everyone, and the little noise she makes where she puts her hands up over her eyes and she goes, oh. Like, it's it just really hits home but you also get Bart's jealousy at the same time. Like, you understand why he needs to lash out and be like, yeah, well, because his younger sister has constantly been succeeding, over him, and then to have her lauded in front of like the whole school and him being like, well, she's not great, she's got diarrhea, and like you totally buy it, and it's so truthful, and like, and then to have Skinner in just a very petty way be like, well, I was going to tell you in private, but anyway, like,
Well, Bart did say that Lisa got diarrhea in their last
Yeah.
week
Fair
vacation.
play. And also how you keep tying it back to the television aspect where Homer's watching them.
On school span.
Yeah, on Schoolspan.
But tying into all these elements, let's get into the heart of this episode and all the bumps.
So we just said in the last recording that we wanted Bart and Lisa team up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That was what was missing from the previous one, explore their relationship. And this is why.
it.
Yeah.
Because it's a goldmine of real stuff that people relate to, universal truths about the way
Right.
siblings interact.
Yeah.
It's the grayness of their relationship too, is they can both, like, it makes just as much sense for them to be bickering as it is for, Bart to be like, here, have a blanket, you're
Yeah.
cold. And I'm
Yeah.
really sorry for how I acted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The two things go hand in hand, absolutely. Like, I was pointing out comparisons to the Rugrats movie as well. But even, dynamics with my own, because it's not Bart and Lisa levels of, we're not that close in age, but my brother and I, we have 5 years between us. He's older and I'm younger. And like, when I watch this episode, I'm totally reminded of that dynamic where it's like, you bicker all the time, and sometimes you just go like, you remember that you're actually like meant to look out for me.
Yeah.
And sure, vice versa as well. But like you get those bits where it's just like, well, why can't you just for once be on my side? And then when it is, it's all the more lovely. Like, yeah.
Well, yeah, it makes sense for the characters to bicker as well because they are forced in this situation where they're meant to be together. And also that situation makes sense for the characters. Lisa's smart, Bart's dumb. They're 2 grades apart. Like, yeah, why not?
I don't know what episode it comes from, but there's a point that's really indicative of the relationship between Bart and Lisa where Marge says to Bart, you do love your sister, right? And he's like, don't, look, I know it, you know it, she knows it. It's like, yes, I love her.
Yeah. Someone, I think this is a Lindsay Ellis film, but when she's talking about Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and you have Nebula and Gamora like going up against each other with huge Gatling guns and like really fighting to the death. And she's like, sure, you may not have had this fight with your sibling, but it sure felt like it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Where like, you know.
My brothers and I, we laugh about it now. But there used to be a thing because I am much smaller than them. We're all 4 years apart and I'm the youngest. So my oldest brother was 8 years older. And what he used to do is I would be, really upset and mad over something. I'd be like, I'm going to call mum. So I'd race to the dial-up phone on the wall and I'd pick it up and he would stand beside me, wait until I dial half a number to give me some fucking hope and then just press the end receiver. And I don't have a mobile. I don't have anything. But he was that much of a dick and we look back at it now and go, we used to fight a lot.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
And it's part of an arc. I think that's what really makes it work in this episode is they start very against each other and bickering and the story takes them to a place where they have
to work together.
They have to work together and they have to grow. Yeah. And so you feel like something is happening in the episode. It is growing and changing and we see the characters learn something.
Yeah.
And there's completely absent.
There's a
the
narrative sense for bringing it back to the status quo.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a reason for Bart to go back up and there's a reason for Lisa to go back down. Like, big fish, big fish.
Yeah, it reminds me of Matilda a lot. Do you remember in Matilda where the whole thing in the book is that the reason that she has these telekinetic powers is just because she has such an overactive brain.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's being kept in, a lower grade, that she has nowhere to channel this extra energy.
Yeah.
And that when Miss Honey does get her put in like a senior grade, the fact that she's actually being challenged means that she's actually being challenged. Like, and there's a thing there with Lisa where she relishes her status as the smartest kid in the room.
Yeah. It's a very honest way of looking at it. Yeah. I don't do like in that Skinner just about manages to make it meta where they go, oh, what has this episode taught us?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to mention Skinner's other line, which I adore. Just, watch out, Beatles.
With MC Safety
and the caution crew.
Cross the walk and
Drink juice, have fun, or something
yum,
like that. Drink juice, yum yum.
It was a more innocent time, but we now know juice is fucking
actually,
terrible for you.
The rule is you can juice your vegetables, you can't juice your fruits.
Oh.
Yeah.
So if you just drink fruit juice, it's got none of the fiber, so it doesn't fill you up.
It's just sugar.
It's got basically none of the nutrients.
You
It's
might as
literally
well be
just
drinking
acidic sugar.
soft drink.
Yeah.
I have juice in my fridge now.
Sorry, buddy, it's not very good.
Throw it out.
It's not very good for you.
But ultimately, did this feel like an episode of The Simpsons?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Does this remind you
Positively.
of the show you know and love?
Oh, 100%.
Totally. Especially because I was quite young when this episode came out. So for me, it is quite like a formative time of Simpsons.
It actually reminds me of a Futurama episode, which is When Aliens Attack, which is an episode all about television. And it's just putting a spotlight on television, the nature of it, how it can be shit. Like, it focuses a lot on, single female lawyer.
Single female lawyer having lots of sex.
And this as well just comments on the nature of television and then focuses on the Bart and Lisa relationship.
Yeah.
And both are strong foundations to build a great episode from. And every character from Skinner, Maggie, Milhouse, everyone has a purpose for their one-liners. Yep. Even a great use of your Marge.
Yeah.
Everyone is who they are meant to be and were established to be. And it just feels like it just fucking flows. It just
we have like a little family team moment at the beginning when they decide to get cable.
They go to the races together.
Yeah, they all come together. They're like, no, I mean, it's slightly teaming up against Marge. She's the voice of reason. And she's like, we don't really need this. And they're like, yes, let's do it.
You get A+ parenting. Kids, you're both right. And Homer is completely satisfied with that parenting.
Yeah.
I think for me, what makes it feel like Simpsons is the characters are used for what they represent and what's core about them in the family dynamic and with each other. And without that kind of underpinning an episode, it loses its grounding to what what the core of the show is, which is a sitcom, a family sitcom.
Yeah.
In the previous one we watched, it doesn't really explore anything universal about what it means to be a part of a family or have a brother or sister, whereas this is a sitcom at heart with a sitcom plot where you feel it actually is about something and the characters embody what it's about.
Yeah.
It feels considered. It's not a mess, as you mentioned from the last episode.
No, that's right. And yeah, the characters are all behaving themselves. I will say it does more feel like a teens era Simpsons in that, yeah, they do rush to the ending, and the thing with the hillbillies,
That's very weird.
that is very a weird
That's
way.
very absurdist.
Yeah.
And I married a bear and started a whole I'm not a bear. Rah, rah.
No one understands you. I feel like I shouldn't like that joke, but I really do.
I really
I
do.
quite enjoy it.
Because then they linger on that shot just long enough for him to go,
That's the thing that really makes me smile about this episode as compared to the last one. The last one felt so forced that it just felt so long, but it didn't trust itself to take time and pause. So even though it did feel long, it felt long because the jokes were so labored. Like they felt like they had to just churn them out. Where here the jokes fly thick and fast, but they're not afraid to like just give a pause. Like the whole, you're both right.
Yeah.
Beat. Anyway, like
yeah, Tim Long, he's the writer, yeah?
Yeah, not someone we're actually usually a fan of. Like,
Yeah, wow.
Okay.
He wrote the Gaga episode.
right, the one that lives in infamy that I also haven't watched.
Don't know anything
It's
about it.
hard, man. It
it's
is a
bad.
hard
It's
watch.
bad.
Ooh.
It's that is. I've seen some things, man.
Moving on, quick.
But yes or no, would you watch this one again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it again, and if we watch it again, we might want to put it in a Simpsons playlist. So, what playlist would you like to put this in?
Well, Bart and Lisa episodes.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
her birthday, even though it's a bit
The
problematic now.
hockey episode.
Hockey was such
Yeah.
a good one.
Oh man, when they're remembering all the things with each other, and the ice
Yeah.
cream falls off, and he gives her the oh my god,
yeah, that's
melts
so
my
adorable.
heart.
Maybe even put it alongside one that explores their relationship as they get older, like in the
Yeah,
fantasy
the
way.
future one.
The future
Lisa
episodes.
becomes president.
Yeah.
Bart mooches off her.
Yeah. Moochie moochie.
Yeah.
And also Simpsons and the TV, like in the other one where they steal cable TV. Yeah. So, Phil, is there anything you'd like to change about this episode?
I think the hillbilly resolution might be better served with them sort of teaming up to use their skills.
Yeah.
So Lisa has an idea which Bart then perfects. Instead of just having like the sweet moment with the blankets, fine.
Yep.
But it would be nice to have them join forces in a kind of satisfying way where they recognize each other's strengths.
Yeah, have your lawful good interact with your chaotic evil.
Yeah. No, absolutely. How about you, Sean? Anything you'd like to change?
Not really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and assist Phil in changing his episode.
Sean with the alley-oop?
I'm going to give you an extra 30 seconds to be able to facilitate that because I'm cutting the extra long couch gag from Get Smart.
Oh.
Just giving you the shortened Simpsons intro, and that's the 30 seconds you get to use to fulfill that.
To fulfill
scene.
that, yeah.
That's
okay.
a solid point.
They make some sort of signal fire or something.
I'm
yeah.
going to fuck you all up. Put back the Get Smart intro because I really enjoy Get Smart. But I am going to cut the bulimia joke.
Yeah,
do it.
Both
Go for it.
iterations of it because it's just shit. It's terrible.
Don't need your Dan Rather.
and it's not funny.
No.
So
Anything else you'd like to change, Alan?
Actually, no, not really. Like, I think the similar thing to what Phil said, just have it be more them teaming up and them realizing the weaknesses and strengths that each other has because Lisa's not willing to do certain things. And Bart is willing to use his love for being a nuisance to facilitate what his sister wants to do sometimes. So I think that would be a better ending.
Ellen, do you have any other notes?
I also clearly 2002 was a popular year for Dakota as
Yeah.
a name, and Tyler. All the
Tyler.
boys were
Yeah,
named
yeah.
Tyler and all the girls were named Dakota.
Dakota!
Dakota. Oh,
Shaniqua.
God.
Phil, any other notes?
I was tickled by a quick internet bubble joke.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's worth 10 million, 1 million, 100,000. Nothing.
He's broke.
Yeah, and he's broke. For some reason, I have written here no in quotation marks.
I can't help you. I just know
Someone-
it comes after the field trip memorials.
Someone
Had to be
says
after them.
no in an amusing way, and I just know what
Is it everyone just being like, that's just sad? Like denying
No, I have.
Millhouse?
That's just sad, which was a
Okay.
brilliant moment.
Yeah.
where he goes his
Ay
cowabunga.
caramba.
Ay caramba.
Oh, does he say ay caramba?
the
says
status
cowabunga.
quo. Ay caramba.
Yeah.
Ay caramba, yeah.
Which is good because it is sort of pointing out the meta moment of that and saying how tacky it is.
How
whereas-
annoying your catchphrase is.
Yeah, because like they do that with Milhouse in later episodes where he constantly does the whole "what's up" thing,
Yes,
and
he
it's
does.
like originally meant to be, oh, he's so dorky. Of course, he's the only person still doing this, but then that sort of becomes his thing.
Yeah.
and
Mm.
it,
The other thing I really liked was the little teacher politics with the
Oh,
third
yeah.
grade teacher going, Bart comes from Mrs. Krabappel.
Slut.
Lisa
And
from Mrs. Hoover.
Mrs. Hoover. Glug, 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 glug. Yeah, I
it was a
found-
really nice insight into the way teachers view
I
each
found
other.
that hilarious as well because my mum works in a school and she's constantly bitching about other There's one that she bitches about a lot because she's like basically a hippie and she's like, and she has a voice for her as well. That's how you know she's like, it's really shat her where she's like,
Yeah.
and when she comes in she goes, I just want to do something with the kids that really involves their creative licensing. You know? Yeah, my mom's like, get fucked.
We did mention it before, but I really like the way they deliver the gag of Maggie like ready to step up to the plate of replacing Bart and
Yes.
Lisa in that she has a mini saxophone and
And
a
a
mini
skateboard.
skateboard. It's really
She's
beautiful.
very relieved to chuck
Just like,
those
oh,
in.
whatever. Yeah,
I
fine.
can be myself.
Thank God.
I figured out what you know
Oh, yes, please.
was. Bart, is that you? No.
Oh, yes. The random guy.
In a bush.
In a bush, yes.
Yeah.
Quick side note. We once built a treehouse in a reserve. So we just put all this stuff, put all food in there, put a toilet roll in there. I don't know why we thought we were going to use it. We were about 10 years old. And then the next day, we went there and we're getting closer and we see that the toilet roll's been used. And then, like, one of my friends just keeps going, who stole my toilet paper? Who stole my toilet paper? And then I see a shadow and I just go, hello? And I just hear, go away, I'm living here.
Oh my God.
So we had our no moment. It was just someone had taken over our little cubby house.
You did put
Oh,
it in
wow.
a public reserve, so
Look, it wasn't ours. It wasn't our real estate. So
He was squatting, and you can assume he was squatting.
He was. Yes.
Did that fella a service, I'd say.
yeah.
Finally, this tree's paying off. How about you, Sean? Any other notes?
Yeah. Besides what's already been mentioned, I've got. I loved Bart with optimism ventures off into the forest because he knows where he's going, and then he circles back around, completely disheveled, just goes, I must be getting close. I recognize that girl.
I also love that he's like, I'm going to do what the kids in the Blair Witch Project did.
Yeah. Good strategy.
I like Marge's. I wish it became a catchphrase. Get back, honky cat.
Way more catchy than stabbity stab stab.
And then I just had a question, which was, what would our state pastor be?
Fusilli.
Fusilli.
Oh, I like fusilli.
Good, thank you.
I might
Done.
say penne.
Tubes.
Yeah.
Pasta tubes.
It's a sauce. it's a sauce bearing pasta.
Sauce.
Sauce-bearing pasta.
It is. Don't argue with me on this shit. I know. Fucking
she's
Italian.
Italian.
And that was it?
Yeah, I'm done.
I have one thing. I'm fairly sure the plastic casing of a shoelace is called an aglet.
nice.
Which is the
It
thing that
yeah.
Marge is like, that's the plastic casing on Bart's shoe. And she's like, a mother knows. And I'm
Ellen's
like,
fashion corner.
that's my fashion.
It's an aglet.
Yeah.
All right, it's time for my final notes with the robot show where he goes, now back to Robot Rumble. Very good joke.
Yeah, they didn't want to do a second take of that.
And when Skinner tries to trick Marge and Homer into not suing them for losing their kids, and Homer's like, you can't pull one over on us. We're from the learn to fart state. Like,
That's right.
that's implying that it's already become their state flag.
I missed that joke completely.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I used to be lost until a friend turned me onto a book that changed my life. That book was Lisa is Stupid.
That is a classic, like, misdirect that kids do where it's
Yeah.
like, have a look in this box, and then when you open the box, you just make like a fart noise or something.
Yeah.
And you're like,
It's also a line I'm going to use from now on.
yeah, it's great.
And my final note is I love how they did the comment on Punch Buggy.
2 for flinching.
God,
yes.
Did you guys go by the 2 for flinching rule? Because I know
course.
I did. Yeah.
I sucked at that game.
We also did we had Yellow Car was ours. We didn't
Oh,
do
okay.
Punch Buggy. We did Yellow Car.
Oh.
Because they're somewhat rare in the UK compared to Australia.
So it's gonna be like-
I introduced it to people in Australia and I was like, oh shit. There are a lot of yellow cars
UK
here compared to
we
the UK.
I know
where they're
I
all
used to
silver
have
or white.
have a game with a friend where we would like for a car trip, we would pick a color of car, and then the number that we counted, whoever had the highest number would win. But you'd never want to do like white because you just fucking obliterate everyone else. And we had to like make a ruling where like, you can't pick white, okay?
It's not even a color.
You can't do it, yeah. It's all the colors.
And just in this moment, it just made me think of the cover of Abbey Road because there is a Volkswagen Beetle in it. And I can just imagine like John reaching over to George and go, punch buggy.
That's the alternate cover art.
Yeah. He would,
Them all punching each other in the back of the head.
yeah.
Except Ringo. Of course he could.
Yeah, I would say John would do that, wouldn't he?
He would.
Fucking cunt.
It's time to rank this thing. Sean's turn to start it off.
Oh, give me a gold, baby.
Gold. Big old gold.
Big old gold. It's not in the upper echelon.
Echelon.
That's my aneurysm for this episode.
Yes. Yes.
As far as like, it's not cubic zirconia as far as, really classic height of Simpsons, but especially heading to the teen eras, I go, this is an episode that I remember quite fondly and quite vividly, and I'm laughing all the way through. It's got its strength. It's one simple narrative, which is what we said for the last episode. You don't always need a B plot. Just give me a very strong A plot, beginning, middle, end.
Very strong A.
Gold.
How about you, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that keeps it from perfection are a couple of punching down gags, like the bulimia gag. If it didn't have those, and maybe if there was something in the plot that was just a little bit more sort of transcendentally iconic, it's a lot to ask, but there are Simpsons episodes out there that are that.
Yeah.
So things like, the Beer Baron episode is like my classic. That's my cubic zirconia standard. I agree with Sean. This is more of a gold standard for me. Great.
Yeah.
Still great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gold from me as well.
Yep, and that's who I was going to ask next.
Yep.
Elaborate.
Well, basically,
I love it.
Show you're working.
no. No, it's great. But if it didn't have the bulimia gag and it was just maybe like a bit more quotable, I do love the absurdism. So I think the absurdism could rocket into something that you could just quote. But yeah, there's really two gags that keep it from being just like fucking brilliant. Like, but otherwise I think it's great. And I relate a lot to the sibling rivalry. I think there's a lot of poignancy. I think all the issues they tackle are like, there's never the idea that it's frivolous just because it's only applicable to children. Like your teacher embarrassing you and your teacher forcing you to get along with someone who you do not like and only exacerbating the problem is so real. And I'm sure we've all experienced it. And it's just, it feels like when you're in the midst of it as a child, it feels like the worst thing that could happen to you. And it feels like everyone's ganging up on you. And I like that they go for the drama of that. And they also go for the humor at the same time. Like they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going gold as well. There's a real human element it's in this one that's especially missing out of the teens era that I was probably more on the gold-silver borderline, but I sort of just jumped over. I'm willing to forgive some of the, like the rushed ending and some of the poorer jokes just because the rest of it was so solid gold throughout. All right, and averaging out, well, not averaging, this is just a unanimous gold.
Yeah.
Solid gold.
And it is the highest rated episode from season 14 now.
Hey,
Sick.
you're welcome.
And it'll be joining other such teen era episodes that are gold as Lisa the Tree Hugger
Oh, yes. Yep.
with Josh Jackson. I'm a level 5 vegan. I don't eat anything that casts a shadow.
Cast a Shadow, yes. I love that episode. I absolutely love it.
Dolan in the Wind, where Homer finds out his middle name. And
The
It's
J.
Jay.
Stands
Yeah.
for J.
Yeah.
And also Two Bad Neighbors, which we mentioned before, where Homer and George Bush Sr. get into a fight. Excellent gold standard.
Who is the
Fantastic.
like shit president? That,
Gerald Ford.
Do you like football?
nachos? Would you like
don't
to
you
watch
come over and
nachos
watch the game?
watch football? That's great. I just love it.
Yeah. All right, guys, it is time for our classic episode.
Whoa.
And so the first two episodes I picked on the basis that there was an appearance of Bender in them. Sure. Not much other links to Futurama in them. But this one I was like, oh, what do I pick for a classic? What could tie into Futurama? And I'm like, maybe a Future Jump episode.
Yeah.
So we are going to the distant year of the year 2010, where we are going to watch Lisa's Wedding.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
I like the idea that you find a classic episode that has Bender in it somehow.
They didn't know.
So fucking happy. Oh my god.
And we are back, and we are going to review our classic episode and what a classic it is. And Sean, you're a wrestling fan, yeah?
Yeah, since I was 4 years old.
Yeah, did you know this is Rey Mysterio's favorite episode?
Did you, Sean?
Did you, Sean? How do you know this?
Because
I don't know it.
because this is season 6, episode 19.
Oh, fuck you.
I don't.
So, for those who
I
don't
don't get
know,
the joke.
Rey Mysterio is from Miami, and the area code for Miami is 619.
Ah.
And
So,
that's a number associated with him, is it?
yeah.
Look,
You got me. You got me, Elliot.
I'm sure the joke scans.
Yeah, for all our Australian podcast / wrestling fans, there will be quite a lot of them, actually, so you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, all 5.
Yeah.
But yes, season 6, episode 19, Lisa's Wedding. First released in March of 1995. It was directed by Jim Reardon, written by Greg Daniels, who you might know is the person who developed the US Office, and he also started Parks and Rec.
Yeah, what a pedigree, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and he was also one of the guys behind King of the Hill as
Those
well.
are all well, I don't know so much about King of the Hill. I don't watch it, but
Don't get
those are
bothered.
all shows that like involve so much heart. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? They really base the humor,
They're wholesome.
Yeah.
off wholesome things and really making you care about the characters at the same time. So
Is this Greg's
precedent.
first episode for The Simpsons? Do you know if this is his debut episode? Oh, I put you on the spot.
while we do this, do you guys want to feel old?
Go
yeah.
on.
How old were you? Because I was 4.
I wasn't born.
Oh, fuck me.
I
I was in grade 3.
I would have been born that year, but in June.
So I was in kindergarten
I was
in Thailand.
I was 9.
You were in Thailand for
I
a while?
lived in Thailand for 2 years, and I was in kindergarten at a place called Kitty Care, whose mascot was a pink bear.
Oh.
I was in the womb. So I couldn't really tell you what I was doing when this episode came out. I guess floating around.
Floating around in amniotic fluid, yeah.
Greg Daniels, before this one, had written Homer and Apu, Secrets of a Successful Marriage,
Oh,
Okay.
cool.
Yep.
and the Devil and Homer Simpson segment in Treehouse of Horror 4.
Oh, hell yeah.
It makes sense that it's not his first, because this feels like an episode that understands the characters
Is that
really
the
well.
devil? Is the devil one? Is that the one where it's reconciled at the end that the devil can't own Homer's
Yeah.
soul because he promised it to Marge? That is
So
such
much heart.
Yes, it's the Flanders
Yeah.
episode.
This
Yeah.
guy brings the heart.
Yeah.
does.
In this episode especially. And in this
God.
episode, you know this one. This is the Future Jump one. Lisa's Wedding. I don't need to explain it. Guys, what do you think?
I'm getting
good.
a bit teary actually thinking about it. Like, this is such a memorable one for me. And like it's very tied up in a lot of emotions because I know it was something that like my dad would always reference to me, and like just the whole thing of like you're embarrassed by your family a little bit, but like especially when you bring a person into a relationship and then you do the whole thing of meeting the family, like. And the most betraying thing that Hugh does to Lisa in this episode is that I think it's way worse that he pretends to be okay with Lisa's family and he reconciles it in his mind where it's like, we just never see them again. Like, he never makes that explicit to Lisa.
How is that not a discussion you have with her before the day of the wedding?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he just pretends.
He just assumes that that's what she wants.
He puts
yeah.
on a fake smile and he goes, no, they're fine. They're charming in their own way. And then the minute Lisa's like, oh, I'm so sorry. They're very embarrassing. And he's like, yeah, they are. That's so much worse than being like, oh gosh, they're a bit fucking awkward, aren't they? Like, it's really heart-wrenching. And it's also like having Lisa have her family's back is so beautiful, and the fact that she really does love them, it's just it's a beautiful episode.
For me, what's great about this episode is that it is unique and creative. It takes a look at these characters and extrapolates where they'll be, and so casts all these people that we know and are really familiar with, even in this early stage of The Simpsons, and really casts them in new light. And so it's really pleasing to see each new scene where they're going to go with these characters, what
There's
they're going
some
to do with
great
them.
gags in that.
Brilliant gags using the time period and some really great bait and switch gags. It's hilarious, but I really like what they do with the characters. I think it's extremely creative, and that's for me is the most satisfying aspect of this episode is seeing what they do with future versions of everyone.
I think further to that is that from a narrative perspective is it's easy for them to just go, okay, let's just chuck all the Futurama characters in here and just see all the wacky hijinks about how every single character is and all the secondary characters.
Simpsons characters.
Did I say Futurama?
Yes.
You said
Well, fuck.
yeah.
Okay, so I get an aneurysm per segment there.
Phil and I shared a look of like,
Should we tell them?
Anyway, Simpsons episode. No, let's just start with one character, Lisa, who, especially in the early seasons, like we didn't spend a lot of time with, and
Yeah.
and then we don't even really get into the family. Like when Marge pops up on the on the video comm, I go, oh, yeah, she hasn't been in the future for the first, like, what felt like 10 minutes. And then you don't, like, really dive into Burns and Smithers and Krusty until there's a reason to have a big gathering. Like, it's very measured in how they... Is this their first foray into the future?
Yeah, it is. I mean, aside from gags here and there, there was the one, of course, in the Itchy and Scratchy movie episode where they do a future jump to reveal that Bart is Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Which ties into this episode because he says at the dinner table, I'm getting out all my aggression before I go to law school.
Yeah.
It's just a very restrained look at a Simpsons future that doesn't rely on being incredibly random once again.
It really makes sense because, like, in life as well, not everyone's going to be a success, and everyone who's a success isn't always going to stay that way. Like Otto having his own cab company and Mayor Quimby now just being a taxi driver.
A yum driver.
Get your indicted ass down to the convention center.
And the fact that it's like, it's not just as simple as like Lisa smart, successful, Bart dumb, failure. Like Bart has succeeded in something that works for him.
Yeah, he's really happy.
Yeah, like his line of, they're finally paying me for this. Like he really enjoys his job, and sure, it's not flashy or whatever, but like it makes total sense for the character.
And he's got his finger in many pies. He runs strongman competitions.
Yeah.
He's been married twice.
Yeah.
I really agree with what you're saying is that it's not a gimmick.
Yes.
It's a device that they use intelligently where it could very easily fall into gimmick.
Which I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe the future episodes that happen later may fall in. Like, it feels like what the HD era might fall into is this trap of let's just make it a gimmick and let's make it random and let's like
see which celebrities we can create.
Yeah.
Like Futurama, which I think I mentioned before. Yeah, that is just like a mess of referencing Springfield 5 or whatever years in the future. Whereas this one, it's just not afraid to hinge the entire thing on Lisa the whole way through and just sort of casually reference and organically reference the characters, like you were saying.
I think that's very important that they use Lisa as like a pin to hold the whole thing together, because Lisa is our voice of reason. That's why quite often she's the butt of the joke, because no one likes your conscience telling you what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
But it means that we're able to have really interesting conversations through Lisa, like through her eyes, and the fact that she is so grounded, we are really able to just dive in and explore this through her, and
the comedy kind of swirls around
it does.
her. Yeah.
It's because she's reacting to the madness around her, and she's like the center of the whirlpool, and her family is off its fucking rocket, and she's constantly the one having to be like beleaguered, being like, oh, I'm so sorry, and blah 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 blah, and for her to acknowledge that she is also part of that and that she still loves her family, like that's so important.
Yeah,
and
when
I
it
think,
comes down to it, it's like she grew up in that family. It made her into who she is, whether anyone accepts that or not. It's like, you're colored by your family. Of course you are.
Yeah.
And they're embarrassing, but they're not bad people.
No, they mean so well. And the thing about the traditional cufflinks really makes me cry. It makes me cry. And the thing where she's like, what about our traditions? Like, I know they may seem silly, but it means so much to him. And like,
it's such a good thing to hinge it around, because he makes a thing of it, right?
Homer does, or Hugh?
Hugh makes a thing of it. But it's such a simple, small thing. It's such a petty thing for him to turn on. Yeah. So it really throws into relief, like straight after what Homer pours out his heart. Yeah. And then he turns around and says, well, I won't wear these little piggy things.
It's horrible.
It really, it's great juxtaposition.
Really horrible. And also, I think the saddest part is the fact that Homer wasn't going to mention anything.
No. He resigned himself, just be like, look, maybe it just wasn't his cup of tea. And just in that moment, you go, oh, you care so much.
And also, he cares so much about his daughter, because he's like he's willing to let that slide, because he's like, this man makes her happy, and I'm trying my best not to embarrass Lisa. Like, I'm trying so hard in this episode not to embarrass Lisa, even though he's failing miserably. And like, it's just like,
but he wants the best for her, but his idea of the best isn't always the best. And, you understand why Marge got a court order.
That was so, that's another really funny thing about Homer letting things slide, where she goes, don't take this personally. I got a court order to stop you interfering in the planning of this wedding. And he looks at everything and goes, well, that checks out.
which led me to believe, I think Marge has done this before. And he's so used to the contract. He's like, yep, okay, cool, see ya. All good, yeah.
Boilerplate, yeah.
On a technical level, I think also the episode really benefits from not wasting any time.
For real.
Gets right into it. We have some very nice, quick scene-setting gags of where
The
we are
Ren- the
in
Ren
the Ren
Fair.
Fair, but not
Yeah.
too many.
Yeah.
It doesn't get too bogged down. It just has a couple of really nice ones, enough to get us into her chasing the rabbit and
Yeah.
then her into the fortune teller.
It's very,
within kind of 5 minutes or less, and we're boom,
Yeah.
we're into the plot.
Very symbolic, isn't it, as well? Like chasing the white rabbit. It's very,
Oh, yeah,
It's,
I
it's
noticed
like a
that,
parallel
yeah.
to Alice in Wonderland.
It's totally
you
there,
know,
isn't it? Yeah.
And
Oh,
even
it's galloping away.
even the bit of her
Esquelex.
as she's running after it, transitioning into the scary woods. It's like something straight out of a fairy
Yeah.
tale, really. Like,
Yeah.
I got to say, when you talk about not wasting any time as well, it was amazing to me how quickly you get me emotionally invested in Hugh as a character. Almost instantaneously, to the point where the second he starts revealing his plan to Lisa, my heart just drops.
it
I'm like,
breaks.
fuck, you're doing that. That's
Yeah.
so
But
fucking disappointing.
You also understand his reasoning, which is that, like, there's pathos in this episode where he's trying to be, in his mind, be the better man and, like, deal with it. And he doesn't realize that Lisa complaining about her family, like, she's able to do that and juxtapose it with also how much she loves them. Like, he just takes that as face value.
It's not a villainous turn. Like, it's not like your family shit and we're
Yeah.
going. It's just like, it's a grey area. It's, you know, you
Yeah.
can see why.
Well, these two worlds just don't mesh.
It just
Yeah.
it reveals something about him and
His-
her that they didn't
haven't
have a chance
addressed.
to explore.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the whole class as well between them, like him being from privilege and stuff. Like, there's a lot of subtle commentary on that. I really enjoy that.
I totally think that.
Getting
yeah.
in her head to be like, okay, was that self-referential or was that a joke?
Yeah,
what do I try?
yeah.
Do I laugh? What do I do?
Yeah.
Such a
American drawl.
boisterous American laugh.
Yeah.
And there's a trap that they could have fallen into, which is to paint that privileged family as being automatically assholes because they've got money and they live in a manor. And they don't do that. The parents are perfectly polite and fine, and they don't turn their noses up from meeting
No.
Homer or anything. There's not really much to them, but at least they don't do
I
that.
think it's just more that is like, well, all the problems are just basically Hugh's
personal problems.
Yeah, he has a big problem with clearly himself and his own pride, and that just, it gets in the way.
Yeah. And do you guys know who played Hugh?
Oh,
Is
I think
it
I
Hugh Grant?
No, I think
it's
I
not,
saw
it's
it in
not.
I saw Mandy Patinkin in the credits.
That was him.
That's him.
I was going to go for a misdirect and say he was in The Princess Bride and see
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
guessed
You're gonna
Carrie
say-
Elwes, but
It's Rey Mysterio.
That's so crazy. That's not
who's
how I
Mandy?
picture it. Mandy Patinkin
He's
is
Inigo Montoya.
Inigo Montoya.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
you
killed
killed
my father, prepare to die.
Well, he's putting on a pretty thick accent in
Pretty
Princess
thick.
Bride.
But also he's putting in an accent here. There's a bit
Yeah,
where
yeah.
he's like, he puts an R into a sound that there shouldn't be, but I can't remember what. I was just like,
It slips in that Rhoda car.
yeah, well, no, he puts an R into something that shouldn't be an R. Like, it doesn't work. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I have a law question for you.
Huh?
In all the future iterations of, future Simpsons, do they always prevent Maggie from talking?
yes. I can't quite remember what happens in the HD era ones with her, but I know in the teens era one, she's just away on vacation.
Yeah.
You're right. Cool.
Yeah.
That is a
and
hilarious
vow of
gag,
silence.
though. Every
Oh.
time. Will that kid ever shut up?
she's quite a hellion, but she has quite a voice.
Yeah.
They say so much with Maggie's character in like her actions and like how she just looks perpetually sarcastic
also,
and
the
over
way,
it.
also the way that they've dressed her and like it's
Her
just, it just
room.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
Did you notice her pendant?
no. What was it?
It's a pacifier.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, at the
Oh.
wedding.
Yeah,
It's
she wears
quite-
it throughout the episode, I think.
Yeah.
Quite
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. And how Lisa's something blue is a lock of Marge's hair.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
cry.
I've got here again, good use of your Marge. Once again for this episode.
Marge
is,
is stellar in it. Can we just give a gold star to Marge in this episode?
Yeah.
Because
For
she,
real.
Mom,
Cross
it's a
fingers.
video phone.
Oh.
It's a picture phone. And also, like,
Mum.
I like that it's a rotary picture phone as
Yes.
well. It's really pleasing.
I think we all laughed at a gag that we never would have got as kids. I feel a bit weird wearing white. What about Millhouse?
Millhouse doesn't count.
I love that Marge jokes about Millhouse not counting. Like it's very reminiscent of like when you become an adult and you start to have these adult conversations. You remember that teen boyfriend I had when we had sleepovers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And your parents like, yeah, we always knew.
Yeah.
Y'all were fucking like,
Not as subtle as you thought.
yeah.
Well, like speaking of Milhouse, like when he hears about the wedding to Homer, and then says, I'm going to write your performance evaluation now, and Homer just has this pleased look.
I hope it's good.
He just twiddles his fingers together delightfully. It's just a lovely visual.
And how good is just to pan across and see things like, Lenny and Carl are now in a obviously
executive
gone up.
jobs. Yeah.
Homer's still in the same position.
Same position, has not changed.
And whereas Milhouse is now his supervisor.
superior.
Yes, yeah.
And-
Mr. Burns has been stabbed 17 times.
We're
in
up to
the back.
15.
Yay! But yeah, with the rotary video phone as well, there are a lot of like details of the future still being a bit crappy.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
actually something that I adore about Futurama.
Yeah, me too.
is
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Life's
so far
still a bit
advanced.
shit.
Yeah.
It mixes old with new tech as well. Futurama does that a lot. It's just like, it's not quite different. But it
Always
is.
pleases me when they use like cassette tapes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Betamax.
Yeah.
And they still have the big back TVs. And,
Oh,
Yeah.
Big Ben is still a clock. It's just now digital.
Digital, yeah.
It's a digital clock.
and they had a blackout recently, I guess.
I guess it's just blink. Yeah.
So yeah, plowing along with the questionnaire, have you watched this one before today?
Oh, definitely.
So
Yeah,
how many
yeah.
times?
Either close to or in the double digits.
Yeah. Double digits. Easy.
Yeah, I reckon I've seen it tons. This gets repeated on TV a lot.
Yeah, for a good reason.
Yeah.
I like can distinctly remember the VHS tape that this episode existed on. I drew a little Bart
Wow.
and Homer on it, and may be edging onto triple digits. I don't know.
Yeah.
Possibly. I've watched a lot of Simpsons a lot of times.
Really? Weird.
Some of the wacky elements of this episode, we sort of like glossed over a few. Are there any other
Yeah,
cartoony things?
Phantom of the Martin.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. Yeah.
I love that so
Yeah,
much.
his funky version of the song as well. Oh, right. Yeah. That for me is an example of the creative, fun use of the characters. It doesn't always have to be serious. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
And like that is so random, but it still works. It still says something about Lisa in that moment where they're saying, she's the only person to read at an adult level.
how bad that school
It's like that and Martin, and it just works.
There's also the like absurdity of the way that the education system is now, where they have triple-decker desks
and all the classes are taught by Pepsi.
Oh, Pepsi.
Partial credit.
Pepsi, partial credit. Yeah, that's great. Fucking gag. Love
That
it.
feels like quite, it's a bit
Real.
cyberpunk, It's a
Oh,
bit,
yeah.
it's, the corporate future. That
Just-
feels a bit real.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
you build upwards and you stack on top of stacks and like
And
yeah.
corporations fund everything, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other wacky one is, exploding robots after crying.
The masters found love.
Oh, just the way the eyes sit on top of the fucking flesh pools.
They must be made of wax,
I was
no?
thinking
Oh,
they're
yeah.
wax robots.
There's Uncle Eldred. I'll get my brain medicines from the National Health Service. So wacky.
I love that.
What a
Heather-
crazy idea.
Heather Locklear is still at large.
The celebrities are
If you see any celebrities, consider them dangerous.
all celebrities are now on the run or evil.
That's
It's
What's
very
amazing.
weird.
happened? What's happened?
And just that sight gag when they first go into the future and it's a dark and horrible place and all these like robots march past and they're actually just auditioning for the Tin Man.
And one of my favorite things about animation shows is when they just obviously get like a side character to just quickly mutter something afterwards. I really can't wait to see this show.
That's so clever as well because, they're setting you up for this future. Oh, what wacky adventure are they going to go on? Oh, here's robots. Oh, no. No, it's just normal life.
World War III happened.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently everything's fine now. I don't know. Maybe the celebrities were... maybe the war was against celebrities.
World War III?
Yeah.
The Brits won
And
for the
Brits-
Americans.
And the Brits saved the Americans.
That's true.
Did you notice the Rolling Stones poster?
Oh, yeah, the steel wheelchair
tour of 2010.
That's so amazing. In the year of our Lord 2019, they are still fucking touring.
Yeah, right?
This is not quite absurd, but I love the fact that the happy squirrel is a card in the tarot deck. I read tarot as well, and like I can't remember which card I drew. I think it was the Hanged Man, and I drew that for someone, and they were like, "I'm like, calm the shit down. It's fine. It's not a bad card." Like,
There aren't any bad cards.
well, there's a few.
Are there?
Tower's shit. Ten of Swords is always bad. And you can tell when you look at the card, it's someone with 10 swords in their back. And you're like, sorry.
Well, they're up to 15.
17. Yeah.
Sorry, my dude. Like, this is not going to end well for you.
On the fortune teller, the puff of smoke is a brilliant gag.
Oh, my God.
One of my favorite gags in cartoons is the smoke bomb gag.
Because the robot devil does it to perfection in
Yes.
Yes.
Devil's Hands, which is where he bombs and just out of the corner you just see him quickly running up the stairs.
One of the ones from Archer. Fuck, who's the scientist in that? Why is that his name?
Krieger.
Yeah, and he just says, smoke bomb, and then runs away.
There's a sight gag. So one of the buildings at the university is the Dr. and Mrs. Dre Hall. Oh, wow.
I love the fact that your virtual reality sports run in the same VR universe.
Yes,
Because,
and can cause you pain.
yeah, because Bart gets hit by a virtual dart and he hits someone with a virtual cork. And
God.
also Mo has a button to just unleash
them.
like a supersonic sound that drives them insane and means that they're like incapacitated.
I mean, what a genius way to stop any sort of violence as well. Just destroy your ears. All good.
Smithers in the first few seconds.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Please call a doctor.
Yes. And Smithers also, take me back, Smithers. I'm not quite defrosted.
Oh, the snapping in half of bird. That is a very cartoon moment.
Yes.
That's
That
so
is
cartoon. In fact, it can only happen in a cartoon.
Yeah.
And like he breaks in just the little diagonals as well. I can't
Can't
feel
feel anything underneath my cummerbund.
Oh, God.
dear.
And all the stuff with like Hugh when he originally arrives at the house and the accidental burning of the flag that hurts.
Oh,
I got
yeah.
so
Yes.
tense.
It's still warm.
Yeah.
And everybody's houses are really nice.
Except for the Simpsons. Yeah, nothing's changed. They just had... and if the
bolted
health
up.
inspector asks, it's a window box.
Yeah.
Like,
But he's done these shitty extensions onto his house that you clearly know Homer has made.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm willing to go through anything for you, Lisa.
yeah.
Beer, dear. Run a bath.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how about the heart of this episode?
So there's
Happy
only
you-
one Futurama episode that's made me cry so far, which was Luck of the Fryrish. And now I just forgot that Simpsons does that for me tenfold.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this salty discharge? What made me cry in this episode was just interesting to see like Homer and Lisa come back together.
So
She's just
beautiful.
like, tell me about everything you did. He's
That's-
like, I ate all. He's like, wow,
It's really
one of the
showing
teacups.
the like flip of the dynamic as well, in that like Homer is just acting like an excited child. He's just so happy to tell Lisa everything that happened in his day. I cry in the whole little speech that Homer gives. The whole reaction to the parent, like Marge and Homer are so excited that Lisa's getting married. They're just so happy for her, and the whole speech about like,
It's a wonderful piece of
you're the
writing.
biggest accomplishment. Like,
And you did it all
and
yourself.
you did it all
Managed to
yourself.
slip a little gag in there still.
It's such a good one. And he's like, what is it? You're the best thing to my name that has my name on it. And not only that, you make me a better person and I learn from you.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's such a beautiful little, it's just like.
That's what I've written.
Like so well written.
So beautiful.
What helps underscore this is the score.
Yeah.
The music
Yes.
to this is beautiful
Yeah,
and
yeah,
poignant,
yeah.
and it just perfectly encapsulates the episode as a whole. Just all the little stings for Hugh and Lisa, and especially when she says, maybe, but I love them and I don't think you understand that.
Can we
and just
also
the music.
Yardley's? I mean, the performance from everyone in this episode really is stellar. But like the way that she delivers that line, where she's like, "Well, I just don't think you understand that," and she
Yeah.
just kind
Nails
of
it.
yeah, it's
Oh,
just
nails it.
The maybe, but I still love
Maybe.
them. Like,
Yeah.
so amazing.
And like
Yeah.
amazing performance from Maggie.
yeah.
And-
But even the other line as well, when she's talking to Homer and she goes, "I'm sure he just forgot."
Yeah.
Like it's so full of hope as well, and like optimism. Well, not even hope and optimism. She's just sure. She's just sure that he just forgot.
Yeah.
and
Like
like even Homer's, where he's just like, it just probably wasn't his thing. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think structurally for me, what makes that really effective is they kind of give it space.
Yeah.
They take out like a lot of the sillier gags, and there are a couple of kind of witty lines in there. But by and large, that moment and her cancelling the wedding and leaving has a lot of the jokes stripped out. With plenty of laughs in the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
We don't need to have them there. And so they say this is the part where it needs to land. in the heart. So we'll just open it out, we'll give it space, and we won't crowd it with jokes such that it gets diluted.
Yeah.
And that's really brave, I think, when you've got a half-hour show that is a comedy, to say, okay, well, for these 5 minutes, we'll only get minimal kind of jokes
There's
in
a
there.
similarity here between like in our favorite episodes of Jurassic Park and even, well, actually Luck of the Irish as well.
100%.
The one thing that we noticed when we went back and watched Jurassic Park is that we noticed it's actually full of gags.
Yeah.
Like you remember it for the heart and like the sadness of it all, but it's actually got a lot of gags running through and really funny ones as well, where like, Professor, lava, hot. Like that is a great line, and we pissed ourselves in it. And it's like that you can do both, and you should absolutely have like emo diversity. You know, like you should have all these different emotions, because life is both funny and sad and frustrating and joyful, and like it's all these things in one.
No, that's right. You're there for the Esquilax quotes, and then you end up staying, and you get hooked in by the heart. And the episode just totally does that bait and switch on you, where you're just having such a fun, rollicking time, and then all of a sudden, got you by the heartstrings, motherfucker.
Also, like, just because you mentioned the Esquilax, I love just as a this is a visual thing that Wiggum has decided to go full on and put on the garb and be really, but he still wears his policeman's hat.
Oh yeah,
He's still Chief Wiggum.
Well, what happens if he needs a police? It's
Yeah, he
like
just
it's
rips it off, right?
It's like that bit in Hot Fuzz when they're working at is it like another fair? And like some of them are in plain clothes, but like otherwise you have police officers wandering around, still in uniform, but like with their face painted and shit like that.
It's just like funny because I cannot tell you what Wiggum's head looks like without the hat. I know it's happened.
yeah.
Like when
He's
you've
just
seen him
got
in his
curly-
home
kinda
line.
curly
He's just
hair.
got curly hair.
Yeah,
I
a little
just-
bit of a receding hairline
Like,
as well.
Yeah, I just can't picture it. It's just like, look at it and go, like, you didn't even notice it. It's just like, yeah, that's Wiggum.
Yeah.
But as you say quotes, like I unconsciously, I knew his lines there, like the two-headed
Yes.
dog born with only one head.
Or even some things that like little things like when will people know that eating meat is wrong? So very wrong.
And I only realised on this viewing, this was before Lisa the Vegetarian.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Holy shit.
yeah, something they predicted, and like, actually, no, we'll do that.
Yeah.
That's right for Lisa, yes.
That's
So
brilliant.
I think this is a pretty cut and dry question. Did this feel like an episode of The Simpsons?
No.
Fair.
Not really. I mean,
No,
a bit more like Dexter, I think.
Yeah.
Oh god.
GOT because of the Ren Fair stuff.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I remember that bit when Ned Stark like soliloquizes about a leg of meat.
I like the idea that you're actually referring to Dexter's laboratory, not
Yes.
Dexter.
Yeah.
That's a great show.
Yes, it did. Very much so.
Yes,
Of course.
absolutely.
I mean, you're taking the established characters and everything like we've known about the characters before, and doing a time jump in a really sophisticated way that like not everyone's where you'd expect them to be, and it's a tricky road to navigate, and I really applaud them on this one for making a version of all these characters that we can still believe and get on board with.
I mean, Krusty gets a bit of short shrift.
He has done a lot of drugs in the
Right.
years since.
Yikes.
Yeah, I wrote down crusty and underlined the crust. Yes or no, would you watch this one again?
Another 5 times.
Let's watch it right now.
To my tally of like keep watching this.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So
100%.
what playlist does this go in?
Future episodes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not many of them I'd want. Oh, this and Bart to the Future, I'd say. That's pretty good.
Sort of just Lisa-centric episodes.
Yeah, Lisa-centric and also heartwarming family ones.
Yeah.
I would even put that. I think there's a few episodes of family realizing the worth of one another. Even the one where it's like Maggie's. It's just looking back and like these characters sometimes take each other for granted, and those episodes really show a character being like, oh. When I look back, and this is why that these people mean so much to me.
Where what happens at the end is they rediscover something about their
Yeah.
relationship, which was there all along,
Yeah,
but it had never been brought to
It's
light.
not just going back to the status quo. It's about rediscovering the spark or getting a greater appreciation for why like you love that person in the first place. Like,
And still a way where you can reset to zero.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, just get a greater appreciation. And the one I draw an immediate parallel with is, I think it's a season 10 episode where Homer and Lisa are doing like a deprivation tank.
oh yes.
And sort of Lisa learns in it that, I'm a bit of a jerk to Homer
I'm
sometimes.
I'm really rude to Homer, and
Yeah,
like
he's always taking me to things that he doesn't like.
That's a brilliant episode. Yeah, I would absolutely put that in there in this category.
Times when Lisa explores relationships and things like her episode with Nelson, for example.
Yeah.
Like that's a really like good kind of coming of age story for Lisa. You could even pair it with her like when she discovers like her new self, when she meets her friends, when she becomes cool.
Cool, Lisa. I was
Lisa.
about to talk about that
Yeah.
when she sheds her kind of old personality.
Both episotes have fireworks in
Yeah.
it too.
You could-
the fireworks. That is so awesome.
The cow that says "marry me." That was the one. He said
one?
Plan B. That's the one. He put an R in
Plan B.
plan.
Plan B.
Yeah, it was just like,
Go Plan B.
clearly working too hard to like articulate that well. But
I really wonder how many people have had that marriage proposal now because of this episode.
it's not unheard
Why
of.
have you got a cow? What are you doing?
Sean.
This is a very special episode of the Simpsons Index.
So, Ellen, is there anything you'd like to change about this episode? That's the tumbleweed going by.
Nah, love it.
Sean?
I want Hugh and Lisa to get together and stay married.
No, boo. She's too good for him.
I'm pretty happy where this episode lands and sits.
Bill?
I would be tempted to maybe soften the stereotype of the upper class British family.
That's just
Well, it
Speaking
just
like a
doesn't-
true upper class British person.
upper middle class. I
well,
hope.
there we go.
It just doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
As someone who's from that country, there are so few people that, have money, but also sit at epically long dining
Yeah,
tables
yeah.
and, have Renaissance paintings and stuff. And
servants
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
it's
yeah.
not the real picture of upper class
No.
British people at all. They live in fancy modern homes. They don't live in country manors in
Manners.
general.
Shame.
I'm sure a few of them do. I think most of the country manors end up getting bought by American celebrities.
Yeah.
That's what happens is American celebrity goes, oh, I want to live like that. I'm going to go buy a manor, and that's who they end up with. So maybe I would kind of make that a bit more realistic.
Yeah.
But it's such a nitpick.
Yeah.
It's not really much to it.
If you do live in a country manor, I'm very much single.
Yeah. Also, what's the crossover appeal with like country manor British billionaires and podcast listening?
Venn diagram, two separate circles.
They're talking about us, Reginald.
Send a squire.
Yeah, I come into this often, like, there is nothing that I think I could do to improve this. Like, I only ever feel superior with the HD era episodes. Like, I'm not actually a writer,
Yeah.
but I have ideas, and this one, I have no ideas. Fucking well done, Greg
beautiful.
Daniels.
Yeah.
Guest stars, the only other one besides Manny Patinkin? Patinkin?
Yeah, Patinkin. Yeah.
All right. Besides him was Phil Hartman, who was playing a very much older Troy McClure,
McClure, yeah.
running the
Of course.
Pepsi
Vale.
education.
Yeah.
Yes.
Vale.
All right, we're here. Ellen, any other notes?
Oh, yeah, that botulism is called steak and kidney pie.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's such a good run.
That's
of
great, yeah.
How about you, Sean? Any other notes?
Yeah, I got one or two. The first one is when the Oracle is talking about what the other Simpsons are doing. She says, Homer's heckling the puppet show. And I want to see that.
What was he saying? I don't know.
You suck.
Yeah, it's just a way of a character being referenced indirectly in such a way that is just so that character.
Yeah,
So
it
Homer.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I like on their first meeting and they're in the library and she's like, well, I can read it a 7th grade letter. And then Hugh just goes, right here.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Read off.
it's
I
very
think she says
funny.
like 75th grade.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
something.
Something.
I love as well the little smile that they have because they're very caught up in this competitive thing.
Yeah.
That they actually then take a beat to have this like little silly grin spread across their face and then just go
laugh.
at each other.
Lisa's laugh when she's like, says a whole bunch of stuff. And
Yeah.
and my final note is probably my favorite quick gag in the whole episode, which is all of a sudden Homer, Bart, and Hugh are in the car. It's like, how do you like driving on our side, the right side of the road?
Oh my
Just
God.
Hugh's terror, and it's just a quick almost like a 3-second gag. It's
Yeah.
lovely.
Bill?
It's terrible.
So in that scene with them in the library, so I was sort of annoyed running up to that. It's like, oh, it's that silly trope where they hate each other
It's a
and then they
meet
love each
cute.
other. but the robot librarian actually references that, and that kind of redeems it for me,
Yeah.
where she goes, I don't understand how they can hate each other one minute and love each other the next. And you can't understand it because you're a robot.
Yeah.
But the fact that they use the trope and then reference it makes me feel it's not lazy, it's intentional, and that saves it for me.
Yeah.
So like the fortune teller, and she goes, "You gonna tell me about my true love?" And she goes, "I could, but I only tell people about the relationships where they get jerked around." It's really
Smoke bomb.
Yes, that's great.
it's a wonderful line, yeah.
But what I love about that, she goes in expecting a story about hearing her true love, and she just ends up getting a deeper appreciation for those who are already in her life. And the
Yeah.
ones that
Yeah,
she
that's
does
true,
love.
yeah.
Maybe the true love was her family all along. It's a fucking frozen bait and switch, motherfucker.
Aloha Homer meets the parents. The
Yeah.
parents for the
Yes.
first time. He's like, "How about that Octopussy movie? I've seen it twice. That's
Yes, that's fine.
That's fine.
it's not too bad." It's palpable relief.
I love
It's
it.
gorgeous.
Everyone's Homer's trying so hard in that. You can literally see the cogs turning in his head. It's just like, how do I not fuck this up?
When they and as a visual thing, when they pan over, they show Hugh's parents, and as they pan to Homer for a split second, his eyes are wide as saucers. His hands are just clasping together, just like,
Yeah.
oh no.
He really wants to impress for
Yeah.
Lisa. It's really great.
Poor
Yeah.
thing. Oh, now I'm sad again.
Know what'll cheer you up? 40 classic Jim Carrey movies.
He can make you laugh with just a flailing of his limbs.
The thing is, he's actually quite an accomplished serious actor.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hate his whole fucking wank fest of method acting. I think he can go.
Sure, but the results
Oh,
are
yeah.
pretty
The
good.
results
so-
were-
Well,
Yeah.
so it depends. Like the whole Andy Kaufman thing. It's like, well, I don't know.
At
if
some
you,
point, you were just being a jerk
I
to
don't know
people.
if,
Yeah.
if you saw any of the Netflix documentary, but like
Yeah.
you see the audition tapes, i.e. before he did any of this stupid method acting, and the end result of in the film is the same. It's the same
He didn't
product.
need to do all that stuff. He had
didn't.
it already.
So it's just masturbation. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, I want to be my idol for a moment, please. And like, it's
And my only other note was Fox turned into a hardcore sex channel so gradually I didn't even notice.
I think it would land better as HBO now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same
For real.
yeah.
Same, yeah.
All right, it's time to rank this thing, and it's Ellen's turn to kick it off.
I think we all know what I'm going to say. I'm giving it a cubic zirconia. This is one of my favorite episodes. It's got so many, as I said, there's not really a gag that doesn't work for me. I think it's paced beautifully. It allows itself to have a little breathing room as well as moving quite, like it gets you right into the plot. Like there's no fucking around, right in, but then it also pays off in that it takes some time to breathe around the really emotional moments. And of course, emotion, there's so much in it. So much. And it makes you, it's one of those episodes that makes you retroactively love The Simpsons more. It's one of those things that reflects on the dynamics and the character things, and it builds upon things that have already been there and extrapolates further, and it just makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. So yeah.
And Sean.
You just don't get shows like this anymore. You really don't. Like, I just sat there going, I grew up with this.
Yeah.
It's just endlessly entertaining, quotable, poignant, and just overall brilliant. And it's like a team of writers and animators that can just put up something so perfect, or dare I say, cubic zirconia-ish. And there's nothing I can say that hasn't already been said. It's just, I could sit down and probably watch it another 3 times on repeat now and, and enjoy it just as much every time.
Yep, Phil?
This is such a tonic after
The gin and tonic that we've just had.
after the absolutely terrible HD era episode that we watched. You know, everything that lacks, this has. As you say, it reminds you very clearly what the strength of the show is, and how when it works, it really is some of the, not just the, the best of The Simpsons. It's one of the best shows we've ever had on TV, and why it deserves such a place in our culture. I hope that doesn't sound too boolean or reaching, but I think truly, it deserves its iconic status, and this kind of episode is why. Everything works about it. Pace works, characterization works, writing, both serious and comedic works, animation's beautiful, and
Score.
the score is brilliant. There's nothing to fault really about it at all. So it's a clear cubic zirconia for me.
So yeah, cubic zirconia, we don't necessarily define it as perfect, we just define it as essential, but in saying that, this is perfect and it's essential. Yeah, this is one of the episodes that I've returned to a million times over the years, and with good reason, and it's all the more impressive when they do a concept episode and then they also knock it out of the park. Like, cubic zirconia all the way.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this will be a unanimous cubic zirconia.
Yeah.
And this will be the 10th unanimous cubic zirconia from season 6, which is currently ranking as our best season of the show so
Dang.
far.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's the season.
So yeah, I'll fire off all the other cubic zirconias from season 6. Treehouse of Horror 5, which features the shinning and the time toaster.
Willie dies every...
Yes, poor Willie.
Grandpa versus Sexual Inadequacy, where Homer...
Tonic?
The
yeah,
tonic.
Yeah,
Yes,
the sex
yes.
tonic.
The Simpsons.
There you go, tonic.
Yeah.
Tonic.
Revitalizing, tantalizing.
Tonic. Homer the Great, the Stonecutters episode.
Oh,
Yeah.
We do.
I'm a member.
Bart's Comet, the one with Bart's Comet.
Yep.
2001 Greyhounds, which we were singing before.
Yeah.
I don't remember
yes.
Bart's comment.
I don't know that one, yeah.
Oh,
Do you not? Are you guys just making a joke?
No.
Having a
No,
laugh?
I don't really remember it. I might do if you
No,
remind me
what's
more.
the synopsis?
It's where the comet keeps going to hit Moe's tavern. It's when the comet, and in the end they sing "Que sera, sera."
Oh, and they have
whatever
the
will be-
shelter.
yeah, the bomb
That's
shelter.
right.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Oh dear God, no!
yeah. And the PTA disbands when the PTA is disbanded. Yeah. And the Springfield Connection, where Marge is a cop, we fucking adored that
Oh,
episode.
yeah. That's
You
brilliant.
missed the baby. You missed the.
Lemon of Troy, the lemon tree.
Yep, awesome.
Yeah. The Springfield kids are fighting with the Shelbyville kids.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes.
Okay, yeah.
And everything is
Shit
Shelby.
Coda, boy. Huh?
Is it like every Shelbyville is just
just
like
shit.
It's
Yeah.
just like the same,
Yeah,
but a bit
but
shit.
But a
Shit,
bit
yeah.
shit. They drink FUD instead of Duff.
Yeah. And finally, Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1?
Right.
Because, of
yeah,
course.
Yeah.
So you haven't done part 2 yet, or that didn't get a solid?
Oh,
cubic?
no, we did that right after, and that also got a cubic, but that's season 7.
right. Okay.
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah,
mentioning
course,
the
of course.
season 6
Yeah,
ones.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, yeah, that about wraps up the Simpsons Index for today. Thank you all for joining me. Like, yeah, this was really wonderful. What a treat. And where can people find you on the greater web?
Yeah.
The wide. Would you say it's wide?
The greater web.
That's what you type in, right? GW dot. Anyway.
This is on the dark web. We're on the greater web, yeah.
So you can actually find us on the A Lot of Green network, which is www.alotofgreen.com.au. Otherwise, we have our presences on social media everywhere. Such as...
Yes, Facebook, which I try and maintain and post up memes every so often.
Yep.
Come join us there.
I'm on the Instagram, so if you want to see the beautiful faces behind this podcast, you can check that out. There'll be a live stream of episodes that we've recorded. We have polls in the stories. It's a way for you to be active and vote on things and respond to things. And if we like it, we'll put you on the page.
Yeah,
So-
otherwise just, head on iTunes and see our main baby, which is Shut Up and Take My Podcast, which is a Futurama podcast that goes chronologically episode by episode.
And once again, yeah, I absolutely adore your show. I think you guys have got a really
Oh.
good thing
Well,
going.
gee.
And
Stop it, you.
yeah, I discovered you guys in like October or something, and yeah, I very quickly binged all your episodes. Mentioned in episode 114 of the podcast. I want to say that to everyone to check it out, and yeah,
Oh, thank you.
just reinstating that. Yeah, you guys are a really entertaining podcast, and yeah, for Futurama fans, absolutely essential.
God bless.
Our podcast is a cubic zirconia.
I've often thought if I did a Futurama index, the top rank would be Diamondylium.
yes. Yes.
Chronotons.
Thanks, man, for having us on.
Yes, this has been
No,
a
you're
pleasure.
welcome.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
Well, let's wrap it up. That's been Alan.
Hi.
That's
Bye.
been Sean.
God be with you.
That's been Phil.
Hola.
And I've been your host, Elliot J.N.L. That's all the mustard in the house.
How did we fuck that up?
Oh, I meant aloha.
Thank you for listening to the Simpsons Index podcast, which is also an online spreadsheet available at thesimpsonsindex.com. You can chat to us online at facebook.com/thesimpsonsindex or at Simpsons Index on Twitter and Instagram. And now please stay tuned for the bonus scenes!
Like talking to someone the other day about how cute wombats are, but also how much they'll fuck you up.
Oh, and
yeah.
you know what? They're fast motherfuckers
Oh
too.
yeah, they're just little tanks of muscle. Like
We had one that was, because we used to live in a cul-de-sac. My friend just knocked on the door one day, and then he's like, there's a wombat outside. And I went outside. We're in a cul-de-sac where no cars go in suburbia. And sure enough, there's a wombat chasing kids.
Holy shit!
Oh,
Just
no.
chasing
Whoa.
kids and keeping up with them. It was a scary
they're
moment.
pretty territorial, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their territory shouldn't be suburbia, though. No, that's not right. That's not right.
No, a wombat was squatting in one of our houses. Is paying rent.
Well, he's paying rent. That's not squatting. Man.
My name is Ellen.
That's better than a lot of flatmates I've had.
Don't call me Wombo.
Wombo. Have you tried changing it to W for Wombo? SpongeBob's joke.
Yep.
Did someone say the water temple?
Death count, Sean. They
One.
kill Mrs. Glick in this episode.
Yeah, they do. Which I completely forgot towards the end because I saw her with Jesus.
Yeah.
Fuck that bit,
Oh
by the
my
way.
God.
I was like, when did she die in Simpsons canon? You're like,
Yeah.
earlier this episode.
I have a gripe here. I know that Simpsons is not going to address this, but Jesus wasn't white.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
Jesus is
I'm
a
so
Middle
glad
Eastern.
you brought that
He's
up.
a Middle Eastern Jewish man.
I'm so glad you brought that
With
up.
probably black curly hair,
Yeah.
at least dark brown.
Yeah.
He lived in Egypt for what, 20 years?
He's got a tan.
He's got a 10 at least. and I'm so mad at the Romans for
No, he's a
making
white
him-
guy with wavy hair and a red sash.
Yes,
you
of
know it.
course.
A yellow
of
guy,
course,
but-
my bad.
Yeah,
and
he's
also,
a yellow guy. My
to be
apologies.
fair, he's yellow. So.
and also whip my buggy is a cool, that really whips my buggy.
Yeah, it's a nice old timey expression.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
I
Anyway,
want to see the
that's it.
moment where Ralph eats a troll doll.
Is BT a giant robot that you can pilot, by the way?
That's funny you mentioned that.
Sorry, I just finished playing Titanfall 2, where your friendly robot baddie is called BT.
Really?
see.
Yes.
Oh, he will love that.
There's also goodbye is short for God be with you. There's a really good stand-up comedy clip where a guy extrapolating on that because he's like, it was a way to acknowledge that life was full of danger, and you said, to you, good sir, I may not know what lies ahead for you or the horrors that may await, but God be with thee. It's so good.
Well, howdy, of course, is
Howdy.
how do you do?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. These little things that we've
I just
contracted.
abbreviated,
Yeah.
And these days, the contractions are like y'all aren't, which is short for you all aren't.
Yeah.
Are not.
Y'all would have.
Y'all would have.
Y'all would have. That's crazy.
Yoladent.
Y'all would have. Baby. Have you guys seen that parrot that's like, I gotta kiss the babies? Like it's talking to its babies and it's like, I gotta kiss the babies. Hello, baby. It's so cute. I love that.
Oh, the only talking bird in my life is the hurting me.
What?
Hurting me.
What?
Twin Peaks.
No.
Twin Peaks.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, God, yeah.
Hurting me.
I completely forgot about that.
Like the dreamer dreams, then lives inside the dream.
I saw one where a woman had trained
dark,
her
isn't it?
parrot to kind of sing Making Bacon Pancakes.
Making pancakes, making bacon pancakes. Take the bacon and you put it in a pancake. Bacon pancakes. Have you seen when they remixed it to New York?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
New York.
Oh, that New York.
Making pancakes, making bacon pancakes. Take some bacon and I'll put it in a pancake. Making pancakes, that's what it's gonna make. Bacon pancakes. Making pancakes, making bacon pancakes. Take some bacon and I'll put it in a pancake.
It works really well.